The kids stood at the market, and a large crowd had gathered around their stall. People were shouting and pushing, demanding to be served quickly. While the boy prepared the goods, the girl took orders, handed them out, and thanked customers for their purchases. They were doing everything in a rush. By the end of the day, they had sold absolutely everything. The girl, holding a basket, told Shiro that they had succeeded. Shiro replied that the sale was a great success and thanked her for the help. He suggested checking their earnings for the day. After counting, they had made 51 silver coins and 10,900 bronze coins. Converted into yen, that was about 1,600,000. Their investment was 127,550 yen, and the profit was so massive that they began to doubt if they had counted it correctly. They definitely hadn't expected this. Shiro stared at the money with shining eyes. The girl said it was amazing. Shiro was a great merchant who knew how to sell his goods, like a wizard who could do anything. Shiro laughed and replied that it wasn't anything like that. She was exaggerating. The events took place in Japan. Shiro was already home, saying he couldn't believe such places really existed. He stepped into a magic portal and moved from his room into a forest. Behind him was a town, just like in fantasy worlds, and 2 moons hung in the sky. But in front of him was his grandmother's room. He stepped back into the room and closed the portal. He told himself he needed to think things through before moving forward. His name was Amada Shiro, and he had just moved into his grandmother's house. When he entered her room, he found a portal to another world. At first, he told himself it couldn't be real. He was just tired and imagining things. A month ago, he had quit his job, so maybe he was losing his mind, and the portal was a hallucination. But the problem was, it wasn't a hallucination. Looking at his grandmother's photo, he wondered if this had been her secret all along. She had been missing for 7 years, and only a month ago did the government confirm her death. As a child, Shiro had begged her to tell him her secret, but she just laughed and said that if she told him, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Irritated, he had pulled away and told her he hated her. She had smiled and replied that when he grew up, she would definitely tell him, she promised. In the end, she disappeared. He still remembered her smile. Even in the last photo, she was smiling. At that moment, he noticed a letter behind the photo. It was addressed to Shiro, in which his grandmother apologized for not telling him everything. She wrote that she was a mage who had come to Japan 80 years ago from a world called Rufartio. She had never told anyone. The letter listed 6 main points. First, her room was connected by a portal to Rufartio. Second, magic, skills, and other mysterious powers existed in that world. Third, it contained dangerous monsters. Fourth, there were races other than humans. Fifth, she had enclosed a ring in the envelope to help him understand the language of that world. Sixth, he needed to wear the ring and read the book behind the altar. She said he would know when he got there, so he shouldn't worry. For Shiro, the letter had too much new information. He went to the altar and found the ring, along with 2 books written in a language he couldn't understand. Suddenly he felt like his grandmother's spirit was telling him to wear the ring and read the book. He put on the ring, and everything written in the book became readable. He could understand it, but still didn't grasp all of it. After some time, he obtained the skill Equivalent Exchange. The boy didn't expect that, and was so frightened he tossed the book and asked who was there. He looked around but saw no one. He decided to forget it and thought about the fact he had gained a skill, just like in novels or games. He received another skill, Inventory. Shiro heard a voice each time a skill appeared. He closed the book, put it away, and wondered what to do next. Should he go to the other world, now that he had these new skills? At the end of the letter, his grandmother wrote that he would understand everything once he got there, so he shouldn't worry. Shiro remembered how she used to say the world was made for travel, and he should always move forward. But it was already night, and he had to go to the store tomorrow. Still, Shiro decided to go to her world. He prepared a backpack just for this, and, after stretching, said it was time for an adventure. He entered the other world and began exploring. He arrived at a village with houses and small farms. He then visited a town and a market where many people were chatting and going about their business. Shiro was very surprised by the town. It was quite beautiful. He also realized he was hungry, so he decided to look around for something tasty. He was immediately greeted by a food vendor who offered him a skewer and asked if he'd like one with a discount. Shiro asked what kind of meat it was. The vendor said it was horned rabbit meat, and for just 3 bronze coins, he'd give him a whole skewer. Scratching the back of his head, the boy said he didn't have any money on him. The vendor was surprised he had asked the price for no reason. Shiro walked away, but he couldn't stop thinking about how delicious that horned rabbit meat looked. He reached into his pocket and found 4,200 yen, everything he had left after shopping back in his world. He wished he could buy that rabbit skewer using Japanese yen. Suddenly, a seal appeared over the money, and a handful of metallic coins dropped into his palm. Shiro dropped the coins in shock, unable to believe that his yen had turned into local currency. He couldn't believe he had managed to transform the money himself. He ran back to the food stall where he had been offered the skewer and asked the old man if this was what bronze coins looked like, showing him one. The man replied that it was obvious and asked if Shiro was a traveler from another land, judging by his unusual clothing. Shiro said it was something like that. The vendor was pleased to have guessed correctly. Shiro was glad his equivalent exchange skill worked. He asked for 3 skewers of rabbit, and the vendor happily prepared them, charging him only 8 bronze coins as a discount for being a traveler. Shiro thanked him for his kindness and complimented him. Then he wished himself a good meal and bit into all 3 skewers at once. The meat tasted amazing. He sat down on a bench near the stall and continued eating. It was his first meal in another world. Though it was simple and unseasoned, it was delicious. As he ate, Shiro thought about his equivalent exchange skill. It could change currency, but he wondered if it could also work in reverse. The skill had activated on its own when he wanted it to. After finishing his meal, he decided to test it. He placed coins in his hand and thought about converting them into Japanese yen. It worked. That's when he realized the skill allowed him to convert money between worlds. It worked both ways. In other words, if he earned a lot of money here, he could become rich back in Japan too. Thinking about it, this was a completely broken skill. This time, he decided to try converting 10,000 yen. He used equivalent exchange again. A coin appeared, different in color. It was a silver coin. Shiro asked the vendor if he had coins like this. The vendor asked if he had run out of bronze coins, then warned him he didn't have enough change for silver ones. 1 bronze coin was worth 100, and silver was worth 1,000. That meant Shiro now had 2 silver coins and 34 bronze coins. He couldn't use 50 or 1 yen coins since the minimum required for exchange was 100 yen. He flipped one of the coins in the air and smiled. Judging by the vendor's reaction, he had enough money to buy anything he wanted in this town. He decided to explore it further. Soon, he found himself walking down a busy street filled with people. It was the marketplace. Shiro was already eager to talk to everyone, especially the girl with the cat ears. He noticed the way people looked at him and guessed it was because his outfit looked strange here. It was attracting too much attention. He figured he should buy local clothes first. Suddenly, someone spoke to him. It was a little girl holding a basket of flowers. She asked Shiro if he'd like to buy a flower. Shocked that someone talked to him, he turned and asked how much they cost. The girl said they were 3 bronze coins, or even 2. Seeing she might make a sale, she quickly said it would be just 1 coin if 2 was too expensive. Shiro pointed to one of the flowers and asked her to give him that one. The girl didn't expect him to pay the full price. He asked if he remembered correctly that she had said 3 coins originally. The girl asked if that was really okay. Shiro said it was fine, but in exchange she had a request. He asked her to tell him her name. She replied that her name was Aina. The boy extended his hand to her and said that his name was Amada. Shiro, nice to meet you. You can just call him Shiro. They shook hands, and the girl said that she was very glad to meet you. He decided to ask the next question and asked what the name of this city was. The girl was surprised by that question, but Shiro immediately explained that as she could see, he was a traveler, and so, thanks to Aina-chen, he received a lot of useful information. This city belonged to the kingdom of Giluam. It was not called Ninurich. There were 3 types of currency: 100 bronze coins equal to 1 silver coin, and 100 silver coins equal to 1 gold coin. The average salary here is 8 silver coins a month. Apparently, only a couple of people have gold coins. Also, no one has the right to trade without the consent of the local government. Even a child like Aina, Shiro, had an idea. He turned to her and asked if she could sell him 10 flowers. The girl replied that she would be happy to, but she did not fully believe that he wanted 10 more. The guy gave her the money and replied that he would need it. Aina thanked him for the purchase. Shiro said that he thought the grandmother would be happy about this and thanked the girl for the flowers. Aina was very happy, because Shiro was the only one who said that the flowers were beautiful. He also asked if she could show him where the city hall was. The girl said that she would show him. She asked to follow her. After a while, the girl said that they had arrived. She pointed to the building and said that this was their town hall. Shiro asked if everything would be okay. Because he was not a local, Aina replied that everything would be fine, because everyone here was kind, but the look of the grandmother who met them was quite frightening. She asked Shiro with displeasure if he was from another country. The guy replied that to some extent yes. Then the old lady asked him to write down his name and working hours on paper, then indicate the way he sells his goods. He can be a street vendor. A street vendor has a tax of 10 bronze coins per day. Then he can become a peddler. He has the same tax, or a shop owner where the tax is 3 silver coins per day. He can choose one of these 3 positions, but she must warn that for the shop owner the contract will be in effect for at least 10 days. Shiro started signing the papers. He could write in the language of another world. Because of the ring's effect, he decided to try being a patchworker for 5 days starting tomorrow. The old lady read his name syllable by syllable and said that it was very strange. At that moment the guy thought about the 1,000 yen per day tax. After all, if you think about it, opening a shop at a flea market in the Tokyo area would cost 3,000 yen per day. He shouted that everything here was very cheap. The old woman, not understanding why he shouted this, silently looked at him, but suddenly it dawned on Shiro that he had completely forgotten that he did not know the prices in this world. The old lady said with a smile that their mayor was responsible for setting the prices, and for the good of this city she hoped his business would prosper. The guy thanked her for her help, and when he left he was surprised that the registration only took 15 minutes. He turned to Ain-chan and said that he thought it was time for him to return to the market, and thanked her for her help. The girl was surprised and said goodbye to him. He had already started to leave, but suddenly Aina seemed to wake up and shouted to him that the market was on the wrong side. They needed to go the other way, and they went there together. The girl asked him on the way if he had decided what he would sell tomorrow. Shiro chuckled, but he didn't even think about the goods he would sell. He was wondering what he could sell in this market. The girl replied that she thought he could sell things for adventurers. As he saw there were a lot of them here, the guy liked it. Shiro noted that it was a good idea, since there were a lot of people in this market dressed like adventurers. The girl also said that all this is because a lot of monsters live in the forest near the city. Adventurers arriving in this city are aimed at getting things, so said her mother. Shiro remembered that this is the forest through which he passed. There were a lot of monsters. He was lucky that he remained alive. Shiro had already started thinking about selling equipment for adventurers. Aina added that it was precisely for the reason she had said earlier, that her flowers were selling very hard. But Brother Shiro bought a lot of flowers from her today, so she is happy. She was glad to meet him. Shiro said that she embarrassed him when she spoke like that, but the girl replied that if he wanted, she could give him a tour of the market. The guy happily agreed, and they walked through the market. They came across a store of lamps and flints, a store of cloaks and sleeping bags, knives and whetstones, as well as rope. The guy admitted that there were a lot of shops here, selling all sorts of stuff to adventurers. Aina said that this was exactly what she had told him about before. They walked holding hands. The girl showed and told about the shops, and Shiro walked and listened to her, realizing that she was a very good child and would certainly make a great wife. And he really wanted a beautiful wife and daughter as soon as possible. He drowned in dreams. The girl noticed this and asked if he was listening to her at all. She asked again if he had decided what he would sell. The guy answered that he had decided a long time ago. Then the girl asked him to tell him what, and Shiro whispered in her ear what it would be, but the girl didn't even know what it was. The next day came. Shiro woke up, went outside and started stretching, saying that it was time to prepare his goods. Aina woke up at almost the same time and met him on the street, wished him good morning. He was already sitting on the ground and had prepared the goods. He asked her if she would also sell her flowers today. The girl answered that of course she would. She gets up so early to collect them and get to the market as early as possible. Shiro saw her flowers and said that they were beautiful. He was sure that she would definitely sell a lot today. Aina laughed and replied that she would sell a lot of these flowers and buy medicine for her mother. They parted ways. The girl was running around the market asking passers-by if they wanted flowers. Suddenly she bumped into a man but immediately apologized, asking if he wanted to buy flowers. Shiro hoped that Aina would succeed. Just like him, he had a hard time getting used to his new job. Suddenly, one adventurer approached him. He asked what he was selling. He picked up the paper box that was lying next to Shiro and asked if it was homemade or what was the purpose of this box. Shiro happily replied that it was called matches. Inside this box were small wooden sticks that could create fire. The adventurer admitted that he had not heard of such a thing before and asked how they could create fire. He asked to look at it and showed how to light a match, and he placed the already lit one in front of the surprised face of the adventurer. And while he was showing the ability of matches to this young adventurer, he was extremely shocked by this. He did not understand how this happened, because he had never seen this before. Everyone in the market looked at Shiro in shock. The adventurer who fell down asked what he just did. How did he make fire? Shiro didn't understand what all the excitement was about, and asked if this was the first time they saw something like this, and offered to show it again. He counted down from 3 and lit the candle again. The people who gathered around him looked at it again with the same surprise. They started discussing how the guy made the fire. Some even thought it was some kind of magical thing or magic, because they had never seen such an action. Shiro told the visitors that they could try it themselves because it was easy. Everyone took a box and started lighting a match and shouting that it was very cool. The guy looked at this with a happy face and understood that everything was going great. Things were going well. When he was walking through the market yesterday, he noticed something in this world, or just in the city. No one had heard of matches, so he returned home yesterday and stocked up on them to sell as many as possible. One old man, holding a match in his hand, said that he had lived for about 250 years, but this was the first time he had encountered something like this. The adventurer added that it was simply unthinkable. Of course, you can use a flint, but it takes too long, and carrying magical tools around is very heavy. But what can you do? This is all the cost of not having a witch on his team. Because of this, you have to spend a lot of time on a simple fire. Shiro said that everything is correct, and so he decided to free them from these problems. He brought them freedom, and he brought them fire. He brought matches. Everyone shouted that it was fire. He raised the box of matches above himself and asked who wanted to buy them. The adventurer asked to understand him correctly and asked how much these matches cost. Everyone immediately rustled, saying that this was a very good question, because they must be very expensive. Everything went according to Shiro's plan. He asked what they themselves thought about the price. The adventurer began to offer that he would take them for 80 bronze. This, in his opinion, is a good price. Shiro said that he understood him. He understood that if everything is simplified, then he has 2 options. The first is to sell them at an exorbitant price, but little. The second is to sell them cheaper, but much more. In the first option, the revenue from one pack will be very large, but the number of clients will be limited. In the second, anyone will be able to buy them, but one pack will bring little income, and they will need to make a choice. In a moment, he decided everything. Each box contained 40 matches, and only today, in honor of the opening of his store, they would have a special price. They could buy one for only 5 bronze coins. Everyone gathered was very surprised and started shouting that they would take 20 pieces, or even more. Shiro also told them that the matches would not light if they were wet, so they had to watch where they were taking them. Today the matches were selling very well at Shiro's. He sold at least 100 customers. An old man approached him, to whom the guy immediately apologized for the fact that there were no more matches, but he decided to give him a number in line for tomorrow. The old man, holding a cane in his hands, asked what kind of line it was and what kind of old man he was, because he was only— Shiro fell to the ground at the place where he sold matches, exhaled, and said that he was very tired, and was afraid that tomorrow there would be even more people if things continued like this. He looked at the sky and saw that clouds were gathering, and he wondered if he would be able to handle all the customers tomorrow alone. He hoped that everything would be fine and he shouldn't need flowers tomorrow. Aina was still walking down the street with her flowers. She was shouting for people to come up to her and buy them. She approached everyone with a personal offer. Soon Shiro came to her. She didn't recognize him at first, but as soon as she saw that it was him, she asked in fear how his store was. The guy replied that he had sold out of all his goods for today, so he had to close. The girl happily said that it was incredible. Shiro asked how she was doing. The girl hid a basket of flowers behind her back. She said that she thought things weren't going well for her. She didn't understand why no one liked her flowers, and tears were already starting to appear. In her eyes, Shiro asked her if she was okay. She turned around and wanted to say something, but then asked to forget about it. She ran and asked not to worry, because She would just go on selling flowers, but Shiro asked her to wait. He ran up to her and grabbed her hand. He asked her to listen to him at least a little. He explained to her everything he wanted, and the girl screamed in shock. She asked him again what he had just said. The guy repeated that he wanted to know if she wanted to help him tomorrow at the store. The girl asked if he was sure he didn't mind her helping. The guy replied that he didn't mind. He would even say that he really needed her. And of course he would pay her. Aina didn't expect such an offer. She pulled his hand to her and said that of course she would work with him, she would definitely help, she always wanted this, and nothing else. The guy thanked her. But Aina replied that he didn't need to say thank you, because she couldn't even sell her flowers. Therefore, she herself should be grateful to him. Such an abundance of gratitude touched Shiro's heart. For the sake of the girl, he was ready to give his all tomorrow. That is why he swore to work himself to the point of exhaustion tomorrow. Shiro decided to say goodbye to her for today. The girl agreed, and they parted. The guy went around the corner of the house and, while no one was looking, he decided to make himself a portal to return home. He opened this portal, it was right in his closet, and it could be summoned just by thinking. It was very convenient. He hoped that no one would be able to guess before he entered the portal. And he found himself at home. The first thing he started to do was count the money he had managed to earn. He used the equivalent exchange and converted everything into yen. Recounting what he earned during the day, he was shocked because, compared to his previous job, this one was just something. If everything went well, then life would be a joy for him very soon. But he had things to do. He needed to get busy preparing for tomorrow, and not indulge in empty dreams. He came to the store and started looking for matches. He reached the part where they were last time and found new matches. They were water and wind resistant, survival matches. He was very surprised, because he didn't know that such things even existed, and he would be a fool if he didn't sell them. He would squeeze all the money out of the adventurers, but he would sell everything he could. He hoped that what he was buying would be enough to earn a lot, while the cashier was scanning all the packages. He didn't understand what was wrong with this guy. Was he some kind of arsonist? Shiro realized that he wouldn't be able to drag it all home, and he thought, what would happen if he used an equal exchange right there? He went outside and used the interdimensional storage. Some kind of eye appeared. Shiro was pleased with this eye. He immediately began to throw all the packages of matches there. He realized that his own pocket dimension works the way he needs, and began to pour his matches there in baskets. Yesterday, that time, he had to pack all those matches into his backpack, and thanks to his previous job, his back is in terrible condition. There is no way he would be able to use his backpack with that many matches. Suddenly, some information appeared in front of him. He saw a summary of what was inside his storage, and this was already starting to scare him. He did not understand what his grandmother was doing, that she received such power, but he also understood that he would no longer have to carry anything on himself. His new power was simply unreal. He decided that he would sell matches for another 4 days, and then decide what to do next. With such opportunities, he believed that he would definitely get rich. Suddenly, a girl who came out of the store turned to her mother and said that this strange man from the store was talking to himself again. The mother mentally asked the girl not to point her finger at people, because maybe he had gone through something. Shiro decided to quickly shut up and go home to prepare for tomorrow. The next day came. Aina told her mother that she was going to work again. She, lying in bed, wished her good luck and said that she forgot to take flowers with her. The girl replied that she no longer needed them. Today she was helping Shiro. Shiro at this time said goodbye to the portrait of his grandmother and said that he was going to work again and asked to wish him good luck. He opened a portal and entered it. He told himself that it was time to start a new successful day. He reached Aina and wished her good morning. He said that he hoped he hadn't kept her waiting long. She replied that of course he hadn't, because she had just arrived. But maybe she stood there for just a little while, but in the end the buyers were already here and they were ready to buy a new batch of matches. Shiro looked back and saw a lot of people. The girl suggested that he give it his all. The guy started unpacking the goods and asked to wait until he put everything out. It was not all good for him, because there were so many customers that they were blocking the nearest stores. This is bad, because he can imagine what this will lead to. Suddenly someone came up to him and said that he had a huge line. Shiro thought that these words contained a request to lay out quickly, and said that he would organize everything now, but he was very surprised by what he saw. Rotasane stood before him, that is, Lord of the Grill. He greeted him and said that he had heard rumors about a new thing called a match. He admitted that he couldn't even believe that he had done all this himself, but it seemed to him that something was wrong. He was just mired in visitors. Shiro replied that everything was really like that. The man thought about it and said that it was bad. The girl standing next to him said that in that case they had a small shop on the outskirts of town. they could let him use it today so he wouldn't disturb the other sellers. Shiro asked if they were sure that they would give him this shop. The girl confirmed that they had a day off anyway, and of course there was no need to worry about it. The guy said that they were very grateful to them. He also asked permission to ask him a question. He asked the man if his wife was standing next to him. The man looked at her in surprise and replied that she was his sister. Shiro did not see any similarities between them. After this conversation, they went to that very stall. The woman led them in and said that they could do whatever they wanted with it, and Shiro and Aina joyfully shouted that it was time to get to work. Shiro showed Aina the matchboxes and told her to repeat again. If he said M, she would give him his small box, and if he said B, she would give him his big box, and they should not forget that they also had waterproof matches. The girl answered that she would figure it out completely. Shiro asked her again if everything was okay with her, because she looked very excited. Aina answered that everything was fine and they could open. Shiro apologized for the delay and shouted that the store was opening for today. People with priority tickets were served first. After this phrase, Shiro started shouting for Aina to bring him 3 small and 2 large, then 5 small and 1 large. The girl was very excited, so she apologized for the delay. And then the guy asked for 4 waterproof ones. The girl took them but dropped them. The guy asked her if everything was okay. She replied that everything was okay, but she apologized. She was very surprised that the matches were sold in an instant. They were sold at a crazy speed. For the first time, she felt the joy of selling. People crowded in front of the store for this product. After a while, Shiro said that he apologized to everyone who didn't get the matches, but everything was already sold out. People left. Expecting that there would be a new batch tomorrow, Aina happily said that they really did sell everything. Shiro added that it was all thanks to her help. The guy also thanked the owners of the stall who lent it to them. It was time to count how much they had earned today. Shiro looked at this money and couldn't believe his eyes, because he thought that he would earn no more than 200,000 per hour. But now, after 3 hours of sales, they have 1.5 million in their hands. It's almost 490,000 yen an hour. For the first time he felt how much millionaires get, he started putting coins in a backpack, saying that he needed to move faster before anyone noticed such income. But when he gave the backpack, his back literally arched, because the bag was very heavy. He could use his pocket dimension, but he doesn't think it's a good idea to use it in front of others. He lay there and realized that just lying there wasn't the right thing to do. He turned to Aina, gave her a bag of coins, and said that it was her salary for today. The girl accepted the money and sincerely thanked the guy. He stroked her head and asked if she was thinking of buying something for herself and her mother, and besides, she deserved it, because her help was invaluable. The girl said that she would not buy anything, because she should thank Shiro. He let her work with him. She wants to say a huge thank you to him, but Shiro interrupted her and said that from now on she should communicate with him without these formalities, because she herself had helped him a lot. The girl pouted and said that she just wanted to thank him. In response to this, the guy just laughed. Her stomach rumbled, causing the girl to blush. Shiro threw the forest in a backpack, saying that they hadn't taken a lunch break for a long time, and then why don't they have a snack right now? He took out the sandwiches and divided them between them. Aina asked if it was just bread. Shiro realized that she had never seen anything like it before and explained that it was a sandwich, to be precise. The girl admitted that it was the first time she had seen bread so snow white. She tried it and said that it was just wonderful, very tasty. A happy Shiro said that he was very glad that she liked this sandwich. They were sitting near the counter and eating. Some girl came up to them, apologized, and asked if she could take a minute of their time. Shiro, not understanding whether they were talking to him, asked if she needed him. The stranger answered that she did. She explained that she heard that someone was selling this new thing, matches, and she believed that this someone was him. Shiro replied that it was so, but now she couldn't buy them. They were all sold out. The girl replied that she didn't want to buy anything at all. She just came to see him. She introduced herself as Karen Sankareka. She was the mayor of this city. Karen said that she knew that she was late with her visit. Shiro was surprised that the mayor of the city came to him. He was more surprised that such a young and beautiful girl was the mayor. He expected some pumped-up older man. He asked her what she wanted from him. The woman replied that firstly, she asked permission to express her gratitude, because a merchant of such a level was engaged in trade in her city, for which she especially thanked him and bowed. Shiro said to this that he should thank her. He thanks her for allowing him to do trade here. Karen was surprised that he has rather low self-esteem, because most of the traders in this city are hard-headed, and then asked if he would help her. The young man did not expect such a request, and the girl began to explain what she needed. She said that this town is in the middle of nowhere. All the merchants have the attitude of they are just carrying a heavy burden, and all the things that the town needs are sold at an inflated price. And their goods are sold at a very low price, and because of this, the finances are not improving, a complete mess. Someone should do something about this unforgivable situation. Yes, she really wants to get out of this situation, and in this city, they need a market. She also had something else. Shiro was shocked by such desires. She took out the key and said that she wanted Shiro to take it. The guy did not understand what it was for. He hoped that she would not say that it was a duplicate key to her house, because this did not look like a romantic drama. Karen exhaled and said that it was a duplicate key to her house. What Shiro did not want the most came true. The mayor asked if something was wrong. The guy answered that everything was fine. Anna woke up and said that she understood everything. The mayor wanted to live with Shiro. She wanted to marry him. The guy asked her to shut up and asked again what she was saying. The woman blushed and said that it was not like that at all. It was not that she was lonely and looking for a candidate for marriage. It was not at all what she thought. She swears it. After such an outburst, she recovered, turned away, and said that it was time to return to the topic. She came to ask him for a favor. Shiro asked if she was married. The girl blushed again and answered that she was not. Karen extended her hand to the hills and said that there was an empty house there that they could enter with a key. She wanted them to start trading on the first floor. Tomorrow, Shiro was surprised and asked what it was for. The girl replied that in fact, the day before, she had received complaints from other merchants. They complained that they couldn't sell anything when people lined up in such a huge line right in the middle of the bazaar. Shiro was amazed. The mayor suggested that he must have noticed it. The guy admitted that he had indeed noticed it, and it was really hard to continue trading like that. The girl smiled and continued to say that if they wanted, she could show them everything. They could make their decision after they looked and they went to that house. They approached the house, and Shiro, as soon as he entered the house, said that he didn't know what to do here. Everything looked simply amazing. Karen really hoped that they would like it here. She said she wanted to ask something. Anna walked up to Shiro and whispered in his ear that maybe the mayor would ask if he had a date. He immediately shouted that he didn't have a girlfriend. Karen shouted back that that wasn't what she wanted to hear. Shiro said that he was just joking. The mayor pouted and said that he shouldn't make fun of her. She sighed again and asked why a merchant like him wanted to do business in the city. After all, it's a small town with a population of 500 people. The guy said that it was shameful to talk like that to the mayor, and she continued that he could earn much more in other cities and towns. Shiro agreed with this, but he thinks he's staying here just because he likes it. He's only been in Norwich for 3 days, but Aina tries so hard working for him. And there's also the mayor who's so kind to him, even though he's not from here. And that's probably why he stays here. He just loves this whole city. The mayor didn't expect to hear such an answer. Shiro was from another world and didn't know other cities, but he was sure that there weren't many cities here that were as warm as this one. Karen turned to Shiro and with tears in her eyes thanked him for talking about his love for this city. She was so moved that she even trembled. Aina was scared that Shiro made the girl cry. He immediately began to apologize to her and say that she did not want it. The mayor extended her hand to him and said that he could just call her Karen. He also said that she should just call him Shiro. Aina supported them. The three of them shook hands and said that they were very pleased to meet each other. And so this young man, starting out selling matches, got his own shop in just 3 days. In another world, he was sure that Grandma was taking a victory pose in heaven. The next day, he signed a contract for a month's shop at the city hall, and he immediately started trading. 5 days passed. They were already receiving guests and asking for forgiveness. But the supply of matches for today had ended. No one could believe that they would not be able to buy these same matches again. At the end of the working day, Shiro summed up the results as usual. He thought that he had sold enough matches for everyone in the city today. For him, it was some kind of mystery why they were still selling out. The income for the day exceeded $1 million. Aina, in her maid uniform, said that she had finished cleaning. The guy thanked her and wished her good night so that she could go to sleep on the second floor. The girl asked if she should help anymore, but the guy replied that she didn't need help anymore. Everything was fine. After a while, Shiro finished working with the papers, got up from the table and carried the snack to Aina on the second floor. He went into her room and saw that the girl had already fallen asleep, but this was not surprising, because she was only 8 and she worked like an adult. The girl began to wake up. Shiro asked if he had woken her up. The girl with a shining smile said that it was Daddy's fault. Shiro, hearing this, said that it was him, Shiro. The girl climbed up to him like a father and hugged him. The guy did not resist, because he thought that the girl needed it. She said that Daddy finally hugged her, just like her mom. A moment later, she fell asleep again. Shiro was very surprised by this. He thought that he was now a father. He covered the girl and said that if she wanted anything, she just needed to say it, and at that very moment he would do everything possible to help her. Aina smiled in her sleep. Shiro's store was scheduled for 6 in the morning. That day Aina decided to take a break. The guy himself sold matches, and soon everything was sold. He apologized to the customers that gathered in an endless crowd in front of the entrance. The guy went to rest. After a while, someone came to him. It was Karen. She perked up that the young man was still in the store. The guy said that they sold out again. This is what Karen expected from an experienced trader, but it turned out to be a little different. He did not understand how they were able to sell goods 5 times more than the city residents themselves. Karen explained that she heard rumors that someone was reselling their goods in another city, and his business there was not bad. Rumors spread, and people began to repeat. Shiro suggested setting a limit on the purchase of his products. Karen remained silent, and then said that she came to ask him for a favor. It was an important conversation, so the girl suggested talking on the 2nd floor. Shiro made them something to drink, and they sat down at the table. The mayor asked him to first answer whether he knew that there was an adventurers guild in the city. The guy answered that he knew. It was called Silver Moon. The woman was surprised that he even already knew the name of the guild. Shiro explained that adventurers often dropped by to buy things. The Adventurers Guild was like an intermediary firm. They take orders from customers and pass them on to adventurers. The organization rewards the adventurer if successful. The job involves killing monsters that prey on humans and their livestock, collecting herbs and mushrooms to make medicine. Karen said if Shiro knows, then they can get straight to business. Silver Moon is the only guild in the city. There is a guild master. This is the leader of the entire guild. Every teenager goes crazy with this nickname. Shiro jumped up and asked what happened to the guild master. The girl replied that he ran away last night. Shiro didn't expect that. And they don't have money to support the guild. Many adventurers are going to leave their city, and then all the accounting, all together. It's just a huge problem. Karen had a plan. She always had one, but now it was more useful than ever. The Capital Adventurers Guild wanted to establish a branch here. Until now, she had refused them because of the Silver Moon. But under these circumstances, she was thinking of accepting the offer. Shiro said to this that just a little more, and they would lose an important part of their city, and her offer, he thought, would improve the situation. The girl thanked him, because after his words, he felt much calmer. The guy said that it was all nonsense. The mayor moved on to her proposal and said that soon adventurers from the Capital Guild would visit them. They would decide whether to establish a branch or not. So she asks Shiro. She wants him to show everything he has to those people. The guy replied that there is no problem with it, but he does not understand why. The mayor explained that she had never seen anything like it, neither in the capital nor in any other city, so she decided to ask where he got all this from. Shiro didn't know how to answer. The girl decided not to torture him and said that she wasn't going to spy on him. It could just attract the attention of the inspectors because only he sells this. She suggested trying to attract the attention of the inspectors with their new products and asked if they would succeed. The guy replied that he understood everything. He thought he would do something that would surprise her. Besides the goods, Karen said that he was very kind, and she promised that she would repay him in kind. Shiro's store was in the black as always, and very soon sold out of all the goods. Again, Aina returned to work. She saw the guy fooling around and asked if something was wrong. He replied that he needed something that would attract the attention of the inspectors, and he was thinking about it. After a moment, he stood up and said that he had decided that he would reach Karen-san, so he asked Aina not to lose him, and the mayor was very surprised to hear the proposal. Shiro said that he was absolutely serious in his proposals. He wanted to become an adventurer, and asked for permission to join the ranks. The mayor asked Shiro if he really wanted to accompany adventurers on missions, and he replied that he was completely serious as it was the best way to find out what adventurers needed. Karen warned him that it would be very dangerous. An adventurer from the city had only one place available, the forest in the east, and nothing else. There were quite strong monsters there. Shiro replied that he knew about it, but he meant adventurers who collect herbs. The girl immediately said that it was less dangerous, but before that, she would really like to introduce him to adventurers, and the relationship between her and the moon is now terrible. Last night, the guild master's subordinate came and said the following. He fell to his knees and asked for at least some money. Shiro admitted that it was a pretty straightforward request. He asked her how much they needed. Karen made a 10 with her hands. Shiro immediately asked if it was bronze or silver coins, but neither of them were suitable. Then he was shocked, shouting, asking if it was really 10 gold. The mayor showed with her emotions that this was exactly what they asked for and demanded to speak more quietly so that they would not be heard. She sadly said that there would not be that much even on the outskirts of the city. If there was at least 1/10 of the amount, she would have thought about it, but after such a refusal, it would be awkward and difficult for her to ask them for a favor after all this. The girl told Shiro that she would write a letter but not to have high expectations, after which Shiro headed to the Silver Moon General Headquarters in the eastern part. He reached her and said that it was his first time at the guild, so he was a little nervous. He entered the building and saw a lot of adventurers drinking and having fun. Suddenly someone tripped him and the guy fell. The old adventurers called him Fresh Blood and asked where his respect and reverence for his elders was. Shiro was already scared and immediately said that he was not an adventurer, he was a merchant. The adventurer admitted that he was mistaken, but asked in that case to evaluate his blow, which is capable of splitting a stone. Shiro was left alone and he moved on with relief. He opened the door and apologized for the intrusion, but there was no one inside. He saw someone shaking at the table, came up and said that he came from the mayor. He started shaking the girl, who did not answer him, and asked her to pay him at least a little attention. She immediately turned to him and asked what happened. She was shocked when she saw him and asked how long he had been there and why he was touching her. In short, she was the poster girl of the Silver Moon. She could call 1,000 muscular men. Shiro told her that it might sound rude, but there was no one around. The girl continued that while they were not there, she herself could defeat him. After all, her blows can grind stones into dust. Shiro, after this conversation, realized that it would be very difficult with this girl. He apologized to her and asked if she could call the subordinate guild master. Now it was more important for him. He needed to discuss something. The girl replied that she could. But she is the guild master's subordinate. The reason why the girl Emil is the subordinate of the guild master of the guild Silver Moon is very simple. She is the only staff member in the guild. In fact, there was another girl, but after the guild master escaped, she also disappeared. For some reason, Shiro was able to establish contact with Emil, but she began to drink rum and tell some story. She was talking about the guild master and his subordinate. She hoped that after what they did, they were caught by bandits, beaten half to death and sold into slavery for 1 bronze because they deserved it. And in general, the guildmaster stinks. Shiro was already tired of listening to this and told her that she did everything she could, so she should stop whining. Emil began to unbutton her jacket and said that he listened to her whining for 5 hours. He is very kind. Shiro asked her why she was unbuttoning her buttons. The girl came to her senses and apologized for this. She asked him if he came on business. The guy answered that everything was correct. He handed her a letter and said that he brought it from the mayor of the city. Emil hated the mayor and spoke badly of her. Shiro, hearing what she was saying, thought that his grandmother's ring was broken and the translation was going wrong. He told her that he didn't know who she was talking about, and he was talking about Mayor Ninorich. Karen, Emil demanded to listen to her, and said that this woman's entire brain had floated into her chest. Karen was the cruelest woman, and if this letter was from her, then it had no place here and she tore it up. Nero looked at this in shock. Emil said angrily that she thinks romances in adult life are the worst things in this world and that Mayor, she disbanded the guild and invited some other adventurers. She is a ruthless witch. Besides, she didn't give them a single coin, and Emil even knelt down for this. She thought that 10 gold coins weren't that much for the mayor. Shiro decided to stand up for the woman again and said that Karen herself had faced other problems. Emil couldn't hold back and shouted that he was always just covering for her, so she assumed that he loved her. She started crying and admitted that she loved her too. She thought they were best friends, to which Shiro replied that you shouldn't hurt people, especially your friends. It seemed that Emil had gone crazy. She lay down on the table and said that without money the guild was in disarray. She did not know what to do in such a situation. Shiro said that he now understood her relationship with Karen. He asked permission to return to the letter. He took a handkerchief out of his pocket, gave it to her to wipe away her tears, and continued to say that he had an assignment for the Silver Moon Guild. The girl looked at him with interest, took the handkerchief, wiped away her tears, and asked how she could help. Shiro explained what he needed. Emil replied that she understood everything. He just wanted to accompany the adventurers. In that case, they would look for someone for him, but the chance was not that great now. Shiro asked in surprise, was it really that difficult? The girl explained that experienced people were needed for the escort. Only a group of 4 people came to mind, but they would require a decent fee. This was the name of the group, Azure Flash. Now they were in the forest. Contacting them would cost 30 silver, plus another 20% for execution, and the total would be about 36 silver. Shiro, without even listening to the girl, put the bag of money on the table and asked if it was enough. He could pay more. There were 100 silver in the bag. Emil looked in shock at such a huge amount of money and asked what he did there for him to have so much money. The guy replied that he was essentially a merchant, but he had just started. He asked again if they had agreed on the escort. Emil said that the payment was quite decent and thought they had agreed. The girl began to unbutton the buttons on her clothes again, so Shiro asked why she was doing it again. The girl called him brother and explained that maybe it didn't look like it, but she really liked rich guys. She started approaching him and asking what his name was and if she could just call him by his first name. He responded, embarrassed, that he thought it would be better to call him by his full name. But Emilia asked to call her by her abbreviated name because only close people can call her that, and he is rich, so he can too. The young man closed his eyes and said that he understood her, but he needs her to let go of his hand. He began to leave, and Emilia, without letting go of him, asked if he would have time later. Shiro, who wanted to leave, quickly answered that he would not at all and ran away. The next day he met adventurers. During this summer, Shiro discovered that a cabinet in his grandmother's house was transporting him to another world. He met a girl named Aina in the town he appeared in. He ended up selling goods in a store that the mayor lent him. After they decided to go to the Eastern Forest to settle issues with the guild in the capital, he met the vice guild master who promised to introduce him to other adventurers. The guy was closing the shop. Aina was standing behind him at that moment and asked if they were really closing the shop for a while. The guy replied that he thought he could do it in 3 days. He needed to understand what it was like to be an adventurer. Aina said that she had things to do, so she could rest a little. Shiro was surprised that she had things to do. The girl replied that it was nothing special. The young man tied his shoelaces and said that it was time to hit the road. The girl put her hand on his shoulder and told him to be careful. Shiro returned to Emil, who was waiting for him. She told him to come in quickly. The guy remembered what happened to him with her yesterday and began to doubt whether it was worth going in. The girl asked what he was afraid of because she did not concern him. A squad of adventurers was already waiting for Shiro. The girl suggested moving straight to getting to know each other. A silver-ranked team would accompany the guy on a mission to collect high-quality herbs. This is Team Azure Flash. Emil also wanted to introduce the leader, but he stood up and introduced himself. He greeted the broad one and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The guy wondered if they had seen each other somewhere, and then remembered that he was the first one to buy matches. The leader began to introduce himself. His name was Lear. He promised to introduce Shiro to his comrades. The biggest one was a priest. His name was Rolf. He told Shiro that he was glad to meet him. He really hoped that they would be able to work together. He was a military priest who smashes everything around him with a mace. He is usually kind, but it is better not to anger him. Next is the sorceress, Nesko. She rarely spoke, but she mastered magic at the highest level. But unfortunately, she also casts spells slowly. The girl hit Lear on the head with displeasure and told him to bite his tongue. He agreed, but in return asked him to cast spells faster. The girl replied that she would think about it. Lear wanted to continue introducing his teammates, but the girl herself jumped in front of him and introduced herself as Shiro. Kilfoy? The guy was surprised that she had unusual ears and asked if she was really from the Cat Girl clan. Lear considered this a strange answer, because many do not like cat girls. There are some in their guild. The guy, not understanding, asked how one could not love cute ears, and in general such a cute race. Kilfa immediately said that he embarrassed her, and Leartel explained that she was their scout, exploring the territory, looking for traps. She also owned a dagger and a bow, but this was still trifles. Lear decided to add that she definitely had no equal in flight. The girl said that he had already said too much, but the leader decided to set off. Since they were now familiar, and not to waste time, he asked Shiro if he was ready. He answered that he was ready. It was a great answer. The whole team was ready to go, and they went into the forest to the east. Aina was walking down the street at that time and came to a bar. She entered it and made a sound that attracted attention. The adventurer who was sitting there and drinking looked at her. And he remembered that this was the same young lady from the market. He said that, as he had promised, he would do everything and reached out to her. Warrior Priest Rolf, Witch Nesko, Scout Kilf, and Warrior Lear, also a captain. Shiro's adventures with the 4 adventurers began. From this point, he hoped that they knew how to deal with difficulties. Shiro walked tensely. Lear told him to relax, because they would try to get around the monsters. The guy said that he understood him and thanked him for his concern. Lear said that they would not be so easy to find. Kilfa replied that if he was poisoned, then she collected tons of them. Rolf said that they were looking for difficult herbs, but very valuable ones. When they found them, the task would be completed, but it would soon get dark, Lear thought, and suggested to stop here for the night. Shiro was surprised that they stopped so early. Lear explained that drifting is the best time to rest. This is a very old rule. Shiro saw in him the ideal leader, and he would like to hear these words from his previous boss. It was time to prepare the places. Shiro rushed to collect firewood. Roll chopped them, and Nesko watched over the safety. They lit a fire and gathered around it. Lear said that matches were incredibly useful. He thanked Shiro for them and said that he would make a fortune if he sold them in the capital. Rolf agreed to this, but if the Merchant Association got wind of this, Shiro would be in big trouble. Lear pointed his finger at Rolf and said that his predictions always come true, and Kilf nodded to them, agreeing. Nesko came, who said that she wanted to eat. The captain agreed that they had been walking all day, so it was time to eat. Shiro noticed that they were eating dry meat and stale bread, and was surprised that even adventurers who spent all their time outside the home ate simple foods. Kilfa asked Shiro, who was looking at them, if he didn't have any food. She gave him her piece of meat, but the guy replied that he didn't need anything. He grabbed something. When the guys saw what he took out of his bag, they started asking what kind of work of art it was. Was it really food? Shiro brought modern food from his world. Lear asked him if it would all fit in him. Shiro answered that no, he brought them some too. The guys were very surprised, and the merchant explained that these were new food containers that would appear in his store. He thought they would appreciate his initiative. The adventurers thought about it, and a moment later they happily ran off to eat. They started eating, and everyone was happy with the new food. It was so delicious that they couldn't resist, and continued to eat and eat. There was both sweet and salty. The sudden tasting ended with an indisputable assessment of delicious. Kilfa, with a full belly, said that she was full. Nesko, holding packages of sweets in her hands, said that she would remember the taste of this chocolate forever. Rolf, with tears in his eyes and holding a cross in his hands, said that apparently this was a gift from God. Night had come. Lear approached Shiro and said that it was better for him to sleep. After all, he said that he was watching the patrol. Shiro answered with a smile that he was not used to going to bed so early. Lear sat down next to him and then suggested chatting a little. He made tea. Lear began to lay out a blanket. Shiro was surprised that adventurers did not use sleeping bags. The captain explained that it was more difficult to move with them. Of course, in winter, it can be so cold that even one blanket does not save, so you have to take several at once, but the speed is greatly reduced. But in such times, I would like to acquire the spatial storage skill, and since Shiro is a merchant, he should know about it. It seems that one merchant in 100 or even 1,000 has it. They say that in the dungeons of ancient civilizations, there is a book in which the spell is written. Shiro asked how much it would cost if it were. Lear was surprised that the merchant would ask such a thing, but assumed that if measured in horses, then a whole herd of noble horses. Shiro realized that this was enough to buy an entire mansion. Lear also measured it in food that he would not be able to eat in a lifetime. The merchant was glad that he did not tell that he had such a book. He felt that he seemed to be falling asleep. Lear promised to wake him up in the morning, but suddenly noticed something. He took out his sword and stood in front of Shiro. The merchant asked what happened, but the captain asked him to be quiet. He woke up Rolf and Kilf, and asked Shiro to wake up Neska. He felt someone's presence, and it was approaching, so he needed to prepare for an attack. It was a dangerous monster. Nesko had dreams about chocolates. She wanted them even more, but Shiro woke her up and told her to stop dreaming about chocolate, because now there is an emergency. Kilfa has already woken up, so Lear asked her if she identified what it was. The girl replied that it was useless. The creature was moving downwind, so she couldn't understand. Rolf realized that in that case they were facing an intelligent monster. Lear asked Nesko to act faster and prepare spells, but at that moment they heard breaking branches and the roar of the monster. They prepared for battle, but to their chagrin, out of all the possible options they came across a grizzly killer, and this is not the best thing that could have happened. The silver-level adventurers were unable to defeat it. Lear admitted that he wanted to turn around and run away. However, Rolf supported him and said that it was impossible. Only Kilfa, a cat girl, could escape, but the girl replied that she would not abandon them. Rolf told her that they could not handle this monster, so there was no point in being a hero. The captain asked what they should do. The priest suggested that someone should become bait. Lear looked at his entire team. For him, this was the most unexpected task. He began to think about who was more suitable to be the bait of these participants. Amato Shiro, the newcomer of the Azure Flash, a complete stranger who is not even an adventurer. Lear put his hand on Shiro's shoulder and spoke to him. Shiro thought so. He understood everything. When he saw the pale faces of the adventurers, his next word will be something like dying, and he will become bait for the sake of the future of others, but this did not happen. Lear walked around him and told him to run away with Kilf and Nesca, and he and Rolf will detain this monster. The merchant was very surprised. The captain apologized to Rolf, and he said that they had a glorious journey together. Nesca, not thinking about escaping, said that she would also fight, but Lear was against it, because she was slow and would only get in the way, and he also wanted to seem cool in front of the girl he loved, and asked her to understand him. Nesca blushed, lowered her hat, and called him a fool. Lear asked Rolf to make a healing potion and pray that he wouldn't be knocked out with a single blow. The big guy did so. He told the rest of the team to run when he attacked. But suddenly, Kilfu shouted to everyone that something was happening behind them. Lear thought it was more enemies. He was upset that they were surrounded. They stood in a circle, and they realized that there were 2 grizzlies. Lear shouted to Kilfa and Nesca to run, and he and Rolf would hold them back, but Nesca interrupted him and said that it was useless. Today they would all die, while no one was looking. Shiro climbed into his magic cache and began to look for something. He understood that it didn't matter how hopeless the situation was. "You can't give up," he threw firecrackers at the grizzly. The adventurers were in shock. Because they didn't understand what was happening, explosions occurred. Shiro shouted that it was the turn of his next secret weapon, the Grizzly Killer. And the monster will regret it. He took out a bottle of gas that was supposed to help. Everyone thought that they would die today, but Shiro was not so simple. Even Lear did not understand what he would do now. He stood in front of Grizzly and was not afraid of him. Lear asked what he was planning and shouted to run away faster. But the guy swung and threw a bundle of explosives at the monster. It suddenly started to explode, but Grizzly started to retreat back. The adventurers were very surprised, and Shiro continued to think about his plan. First, he was going to force the bear to retreat with firecrackers, and then use the Grizzly Killer. He took out a can of anti-beast spray and sprayed it on him. Everything got on his face, which is why the monster started screaming in pain. He began to tear his face, but at that moment, a second grizzly began to attack Shiro from behind. The guy didn't lose his head and quickly turned around, after which he sprayed the mixture on the face of the second grizzly. It was no stronger than the first, so it also fell to the ground and began to tear its face. Shiro was surprised that such a small thing worked against such giants. Probably he hit a vulnerable spot. Lear came up from behind and asked what he used. Was it really some kind of magic? Cyro showed him the canister and said that it wasn't magic at all, but an ordinary object. It contained poisonous gas. You need to aim and shoot. Lear immediately admitted that he didn't really understand what poisonous smoke was, but Shiro told him that now was not the time to think about it. They needed to run as quickly as possible while they could. But the captain decided to clarify whether he understood correctly that their nose and eyes were covered with this substance. That's why they were screaming. The merchant said that everything was correct. Lear's eyes lit up. He said that the adventurers could not miss such a chance. Everyone immediately understood what needed to be done and prepared for the attack. And in a moment, they destroyed 2 grizzlies together. They joyfully jumped on them and shouted that their prey was the best thing that had happened to them. Lear jumped off the monsters and said that now they need to cut them and they can go. But it will not be easy. Shiro turned to the captain and asked if he heard correctly, that he said that he loves Nesca. The guys immediately blushed, and Lear immediately began, embarrassed, asking what he was even talking about. The merchant explained that before that he said that he wanted to look cool in front of the girl he loved. The captain tried to get away from the topic and suggested cutting up the bear. Almost all of its parts were expensive at the market. That's why they started cutting up the grizzly. Lyra managed to get away from the topic. Everyone divided the tasks among themselves. When Lyra finished with the skin, he started on the fangs. Many organs were highly valued in medicine, so Rolf asked to leave them to him. The adventurers collected what they could carry and were ready to leave. Lear had a question for Shiro, but he decided that it would be better to return to the city first. And the material should be sold before it rots. He asked Shiro if he understood correctly that it would now be more valuable than herbs. He pointed to the bears and said that half of the catch was his. The merchant was surprised that he was allocated so much. The captain took the spray can and said that without it they would not have managed, and also asked how much this thing cost. Shiro, embarrassed, said that it was all nonsense. A person's life cannot be valued. Lear called him very kind. Kilf agreed with him and happily jumped on Shiro, shouting that she loved such a wonderful person. But Shiro dodged, and the girl flew into the bushes. Nesco said that she thought the same about him. Rolf supported her and continued that if all the merchants were like Shiro, the world would be much kinder. Shiro laughed, embarrassed, and said that they flattered him, and he also understands why Lear wants to return to the city, therefore. He asked if he could help them carry the bear, or rather, parts of it. All the adventurers looked at him in surprise. Lear laughed and asked if he was really going to help them with such little hands. Shiro opened the spatial storage, and the team looked at it with their mouths open in shock. The merchant apologized for not telling, but he had the spatial storage in the first place. Lear calmed down and said with a smile that there was no need for an apology, since he saved their lives. The guy moved everything to the storage, took his bag, and said that then it was time for them to go back to Ninerich, but Lear, not understanding, asked what he was talking about, because if he took the bear, then they would continue to look for herbs. Their wanderings lasted for another 3 days. They were able to find the herbs they needed and return to the city, where Aina was waiting for Shiro. She greeted him. Lear asked the merchant if this was his daughter, but he replied that she was his assistant at the store. Lear greeted her and introduced himself. Shiro gave the keys to Aina and asked her to wait inside the store. After that, they went to the guild to complete the quest. As soon as they entered, they saw Amelia on the floor. She was begging with tears, and on her knees for a little time, she promised to pay the one who stood in front of her. The guys did not understand how all this happened. The man who stood in front of Amelia was furiously shouting at her that she had been promising to pay for 6 months, but they would not tolerate it any longer, so she had to pay right now. The girl was kneeling on the floor and crying that she would pay, that she would definitely pay in a month, but now she had no money. Shiro asked Lyra who this guy was. The adventurer replied that he was probably a materials seller. Shiro approached him and apologized for disturbing the man. He introduced himself as a merchant from this city and said what he could be called, and then asked if he could tell what happened to them. The man paid attention to him and replied that it was not difficult for him to tell. He introduced himself as Geralt. He really was trading materials. The situation was this: Geralt was an old acquaintance of the guild master, who was currently absent because he ran away. The guild was having financial difficulties, so he lent the master 10 gold coins to support Silver Moon. They calmly talked about this topic. Geralt even showed the contract that he and the master signed. It was written that if he did not receive the money on time, he would become the owner of the guild. By selling the land and buildings, he would close their debts, and he would not have problems. After explaining, he demanded that Emil bring the documents. But she brazenly replied that she didn't want to. Geralt restrained himself as best he could. He asked her why she was so devoted to Platoshi. If he betrayed them, it would be better if she let the guild die in peace. But the girl drooped and replied that this was not devotion. The Silver Moon was a place where she, a beast, man, was not despised. For the first time, she was welcomed somewhere. Life in the guild is full of happy and sad moments, more good than bad, so the guild is important to her. The girl has worked here since childhood. She has a lot of memories with it. That's why she doesn't want to lose it. Shiro looked at her and understood that this is a place filled with memories. He remembered his past self and the events that happened 5 years ago. The realtor came to Shiro and asked him to listen to her. 2 years had passed since his grandmother disappeared, so it would be better to sell the house. Now the guy did not remember all the details, but when he heard those words, he bowed on his knees and begged them not to do this. He asked them not to sell this house. Because his memories of his grandmother were kept here, it was a little strange to ask such a thing from his loved ones. And now he stepped aside. Lear did not understand why he was doing this. The merchant went outside. Geralt continued to tell Amelia that the contract remains a contract, no matter what happens. The girl answered that she knows this. She took the papers in her hands, handed them to the man, and said that these were the rights to own the guild. But at that moment, Shiro ran back into the building, who asked to wait a little bit. He had a grizzly skin in his hands. He turned to Amelia, who did not understand what he wanted, and said that he was ready to sell the materials. Geralt, when he saw this, came closer in shock, because he understood that if he was not mistaken, these were the materials of the Grizzly Killer, and this is a very rare class. He asked Shiro for permission to buy this material, but the guy replied that they were for the guild. Amelia responded to this that the guild would not be able to pay. Shiro, looking at the man, replied that the guild would pay at any time. Lear, seeing all this, said that they also have materials and the guild can buy. Likewise, she can pay later. Amelia agreed with sparkling eyes. Geralt asked permission to buy everything. He promised to give 30 or even 32 gold coins for it, but the girl replied that she would give it for 36. Geralt growled discontentedly, but still agreed to buy. As a result, after paying off the debts in the guild, 26 gold remained, plus Geralt added 2 gold for the bear's eggs. The total amount was 28 gold. It was time to say goodbye. The man collected his things, as well as his loot, and said that he would wait for new interesting offers. And finally he added that if the guild wanted to continue to exist, they could contact him. But Emil was walking on the edge. As soon as he left, the girl immediately fell to her knees in front of the adventurers, and Shiro, she thanked them with tears in her eyes, but they replied that there was no need to thank them, they simply fulfilled their duty as adventurers. And he continued that now she had to fulfill her part of the deal. The girl asked if he really wanted it right now. Since Shiro hadn't left yet, the merchant asked if he couldn't see it. The girl replied that of course not. His mission was over, so it was time for him to get tired. Lear asked her how she was going to pay the bodyguards for no purpose. The girl explained that she had already made sure of Shiro's safety. Lear pressed her, saying that it all smelled like a scam, and asked if she really wouldn't pay again, but the girl fearfully replied that it wouldn't happen again. Then Lear asked to pay them 30 silver. Shiro, when he heard the payment, was very surprised. Lear thought that he wanted a discount, so he said that it was too late to ask for it. But the merchant replied that this was not what bothered him at all. He gave Amelia 100 coins, which means the guild still had 70 coins left. Lear looked at him thoughtfully. The girl decided to leave before it was too late, but Lear grabbed her and asked her to tell him everything in more detail. From that moment on, Nesco prepared her magic staff and said that it was high time to cook the rabbit meat. Kilf said that she was also a little mad, and Rolf told the girl to know God's punishment. Lear began to flex his fists and said that they would never forgive her. The girl began to run away in tears. While the adventurers attacked her, Shiro stood aside and thought with relief that he did the right thing when he did not take Aina with him. This was the thought that came to his mind when he saw Emil from this side, flying out of the guild from the explosions. Shiro returned to his shop. Aina was cleaning there. She immediately greeted him and asked how the adventure game went. The guy replied that it was quite an interesting experience and asked if she wanted to listen. The girl agreed. He began to tell everything that happened in the forest, and admitted that these 3 days were very difficult. The girl happily said that it was all very wonderful, especially that he defeated a huge bear. But the guy answered embarrassedly that he only helped a little, Azure Flash did everything. Aina thought that if he hadn't been there, they would have lost. Suddenly someone knocked on their door and called Shiro. It was Karen. The guy asked if something had happened. Why was she so worried? She hugged him and immediately started asking if everything was okay. Her concern was explained by the fact that she heard that they met a bear. Aina shouted at her that she would strangle Shiro like that. The girl let him go, and Shiro, showing his muscles, said that the guys protected him, so everything is fine. Karen asked what his successes were, whether he learned anything during the trip. Shiro answered that he learned a lot of new things. If he manages to deliver the new product, the inspectors will be delighted. Karen asked him not to hide anything from him. She whispered in his ear that she knows that he owns the storage technology, or an object that activates this technology. But the guy replied that he had no idea what she was talking about. The girl laughed and said that he was a very bad liar. She had met people who owned this technique, but there were few of them, so one look was enough for her to understand this. The guy scratched his head and still admitted that she was right and asked if her female intuition had really helped her. The girl explained that he had fallen right into a trap. She had never met such people, she guessed, because he had brought too many things at once. But this would be a business lesson for him, because traders would not fall for his stories. Shiro realized that he had been fooled, so he would need to be more vigilant. She suggested returning to the topic of what he would sell. Now Aina also wanted to know about it. Shiro showed his backpack, opened it, and said that he would sell what was in it. The mayor was very surprised that what he was talking about was a creature. The guild rang. It was Lear with Nesco. He asked how the arrangement of the goods was going. He admitted that the interior of the store looked great. Shiro responded to this that Aina should be praised because it was she who arranged the products. After the incident with the Grizzly killer, the guy and the girl started dating. Lear asked Shiro if it was true that important people were coming to their city. The merchant answered that it was true. Lear really hoped that a decent guild would establish a branch here. Shiro asked if there really were bad guilds. The adventurer replied that it was natural. There were plenty of guilds with bad reputations, the worst of which were the Labyrinth Marauders. Aina intervened in the conversation and said that the mayor seemed to have told her about this guild. Shiro asked the guys what they thought. Did Karen know about the reputation of this guild? Lear thought about it and answered that he didn't know about it for sure, but in general this information might reach her. Maybe the reputation is only bad among adventurers. In this world there are no phones and social networks. This could very well happen by accident. But the guild with the worst reputation is coming to their city. Shiro really hoped that everything would go smoothly. Aina was holding a broom in her hands and sweeping the floor. She was surprised to tell Shiro that the inspector had not yet shown up. She asked if he could have gotten lost. Shiro, lying on the table, answered that he was simply in no hurry, although there was a direct road from the city to the city. Karen had been waiting for the inspector at the entrance to the city all day, so everyone wanted him to come quickly. Time passed, the evening bell rang. Aina gathered her things and told Shiro that it was time for her to leave. The guy said goodbye to her and decided to close the store, although it was still early. But as soon as he closed the door and was about to lock it, someone knocked. It was a girl. Shiro opened the door for her. She apologized for disturbing him and for visiting so late, but asked if she could look at the goods. The guy happily replied that of course it was possible. She could watch as much as she wanted. The girl found boxes of matches and asked if these were the matches that everyone in the city and the surrounding area was talking about. Shiro offered to help her and gave her several boxes. He lit one of the matches and gave it to the girl. She said with a smile that she had heard stories about matches. It was just an incredible invention. She also saw some silver thing on the counter and asked what it was. The young man replied that it was a space blanket to keep warm. He asked her if he wanted to try the blanket. The girl put it on herself and asked if she had used it correctly. The adventurers appreciated the innovation, and even Karen praised Shiro. The guy replied that she had put it on correctly. The girl felt warm and said that it was just an amazing thing. Then she took the collapsible bottle. She continued to look at things that were completely new to her eyes and ask what they were. After a while, she came to the exit and thanked the young man for the explanation. But she was already in a hurry, so she needed to say goodbye and leave. Shiro looked after her. He became interested in where she was rushing to. Several days passed. Aina ran to Shiro's store and said that something terrible had happened. An inspector arrived recently. He came to Karen unexpectedly, and the inspection began just as unexpectedly. First, Karen was supposed to show him around the city and take him to the market, and only then to Shiro. But it seems the plan changed. They quickly ran to the guild. Aina told the guy that Karen's sister asked to bring him to the guild as soon as possible. When they arrived, the adventurers and Karen with the inspector were already waiting for them. Karen immediately whispered in Shiro's ear that this inspector was a rather grumpy person, so he needed to be as polite as possible with him. Shiro thought that something had already happened. He answered her that he was already used to rudeness, so he would not succumb to provocations. Karen smiled happily and turned to Gabus. She asked permission to introduce their best merchant. Shiro said with a smile that he was very pleased to meet him. Aina also bowed and introduced herself as a store employee. The disgruntled inspector said that he expected more from the best merchant and the only worker was a green snot. Shiro already wanted to hit him. The merchant continued to say that it was just disgusting. A dusty guild building. He asked if the people in hats couldn't clean. Emilia objected to him with displeasure that they cleaned here every day. It's just that business is growing daily. Gabus laughed and called it a funny joke because, in his opinion, she only spreads dirt and doesn't clean, and non-humans shouldn't work at all. Karen held Emil back as best she could and apologized to Gabus. She asked him if he wanted to look at Shiro's goods. She gave him the famous matches. He looked at them, then blew out one of them and said that the goods were really good. He threw it on the floor, sat down on a chair, and decided that the Labyrinth Marauders would open their own branch, but he had a condition. They would have to be the only guild in the city. He asked Emil what their pathetic guild was called, and after hearing the name, he sharply replied that they didn't need it. So they would close down, then the guild wouldn't pay taxes, otherwise there would be no profit, and the costs of building a new building would be covered by Karen, and finally they would get the exclusive right to sell matches. Shiro did not understand this moment and asked again what he meant. Gabus twirled his finger at his temple and said that he was thinking for a long time. He clarified whether he was really a merchant, and moving closer to him repeated that they would buy up all his matches. Karen wanted to intervene in the conversation, but the inspector disrespectfully answered her that now he was talking to a brat. The girl still continued to say that he would greatly help the city with the guild, but creating a monopoly was unacceptable. Gabus decided that the village mayor would not understand this, and decided to explain to her that each city has a specific amount of goods that it can sell, and if they buy up all the matches and distribute them to all branches of the country, they will receive such a profit that they had never even dreamed of. Selling matches to them means selling to the entire state. Shiro thought about it and admitted that it was a tempting offer, but he had to refuse, because to begin with, the number of matches was limited. Gabus was very surprised. Karen said that if his demands were such, then it was worth starting negotiations from the beginning. The irritated inspector took a bottle of alcohol, and she threw it towards the girl. The bottle broke against the wall. He started screaming and asking why he had dragged himself here, to this city, because there were only weak and useless adventurers here. Shiro asked to wait for him, and started telling him that in the forest to the east he could find rare monsters and resources. This should be enough for him to open a branch. Besides, there was already a guild in the city. It would not need to be built. The man started laughing loudly. He grabbed Shiro's tie, pulled him towards him, and called him an idiot. He started screaming in his face that this was just an excuse for adventurers. They were all amateurs who ended up here because of the big competition of the Capital Guild. Lyra's team heard all this. They were very angry. Gabus continued to shout that they were all just empty shells. He asked what they should do now, because the city would start to develop if they opened a branch. The future of the city depended on Shiro's decision. The young man replied that he needed time to think about everything. But the inspector waved his finger and said that he didn't have much time. He laughed, pointed his finger at Aina, and said that if Shiro worked with them, then he would have hired someone else and not this fool. The young man was very offended by this. He asked to repeat what Gabus had just said. The man repeated it with an impudent smile and added that in this city there were only fools and dirty scum. After these words, Shiro hit him in the face. The man's tooth flew out. The guy shouted at him to never come back here again and called him a talentless non-human. Shiro had been in this situation before. He remembered how he had been fired by a similarly insignificant boss at his previous job. The boss was bullying his loyal subordinate, and suddenly something clicked. Shiro kicked Gabus out. He kicked him out of the guild and shouted after him that he should never show up there again. The adventurers were shocked by this action. Karen approached Shiro. He asked her if that fat guy touched her. The girl was very surprised and answered that he didn't touch her at all, but her breasts a little. This infuriated Shiro. He followed Gabus, pulled him back by the hair. Karen told the young man to stop, but he did not listen to her. At that moment, Rolf asked Shiro for permission to help him. The guy was only glad to help. He recalled with pleasure how he decided to quit and hit that boss, a forbidden secret move for which they even went to court. He turned him over, grabbed him tightly, and hit his head on the floor. This blow was called the flight of a sledgehammer. After this blow, the inspector could only twitch. Shiro said that he hated violence, but the nonsense he said about his valuable employee, the disgusting way he behaved with the kindest Karen. He won't tolerate this. Aina ran up to Shiro and hugged him. She was crying. Gabus stood up and angrily asked how he dared to hurt him. He promised not to leave it like that, because he is the main one among the border robbers, and for this not only he, but the whole city will pay. Karen approached him and asked if she understood correctly that he wanted to declare war on her city. Then, being the mayor of the city, she will be forced to report this to the patron of these lands, Lord Bashua. The man asked her to stop talking like that, because he meant something completely different. If she gives him the right to sell matches, then this little incident can be forgotten. Shiro pulled his ears and told him to wash them out so he could hear for sure that they don't do business with people like him. If his assholes even set foot in the store, he'll throw them out before they can even utter a word. He asked the man again if he understood him. Gabus crawled away from him in fear and said that he understood. He began to bow and say that then he would buy matches at his price. He hoped that it would work. Shiro, with one eye open, answered that he would do without wholesale transactions. Gabus realized that there was no point in arguing and said that then they could forget about the matches. He turned to Karen, and he suggested returning to their conversation about the branch, but the girl proudly asked if she hadn't already refused. Lear called the man a fool. It was so funny to him that his stomach ached, because he wanted too much after his too loud words. Gabus couldn't hold back and shouted at him to shut up, not to interfere in the conversations of important people, and called him worthless scum. Lear grabbed him by the neck, lifted him above himself, and asked him again what he had just told him. Shiro reminded the adventurer that he couldn't raise his hands. Lear, not understanding this, asked if he could do it, but they couldn't. Then he threw the man on the floor and said that such a rag was only for wiping feet, and shouted at him to get out of the guild and go to his beloved capital. Lear was unhappy with himself for losing his temper. Karen suggested leaving these fools and not dirtying their hands with them. Everyone agreed with her. Suddenly someone knocked on the guild door again. Lear thought it was that same inspector again. He began to knead his hand and ask if he really hadn't realized yet that he didn't belong here, and promised to explain everything to him in the most understandable way. He opened the doors and saw a girl there who asked for forgiveness and said that she was in a hurry to meet the mayor. She was told that she was in this guild. Shiro looked in surprise at the girl who came and remembered her. Karen greeted her and asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Mirage. She came as an ambassador from the guild Fairy's Blessing. Lear explained to the guys that this is the largest guild in this country. Karen asked what the ambassador needed. The girl answered that nothing special, and she asked if they would allow their guild to establish its branch here. She was determined to have successful negotiations. The guys were surprised that right after the terrible proposal from the head of the worst guild, a representative of the best guild came to them and wanted to establish her branch here. Emil told Karen that there was a catch in this proposal. Mirage approached Emil, took her hand, and asked if she was one of the main ones in the guild. She had a conversation with her. If her guild agreed to become their branch, their salary would increase significantly. Emil, looking at the hand that the girl raised, asked in great surprise if she was telling the truth. Mirage promised her that it would be so. The salary would increase at least 5 times. Emil immediately knelt down in front of her, bowed down, and said that she agreed with great pleasure. From today, the Silver Moon is a branch of the fairy's blessing. She took her hand and asked her not to refuse, because such a chance would come once in a lifetime. Karen thought about it and asked Shiro what he thought about this. The guy suggested to find out everything in more detail. First, Karen agreed with him and suggested to go to the office and continue the conversation there, so they did. Shiro asked Mirage to explain first why they wanted to settle here. The girl began to explain. In one dungeon, their group of adventurers found a map of the continent created by the previous civilization of magicians. There had been no such finds before, so the guild called it the find of the century. The most important thing is what is on the map. In the forest, to the east of Nenorich, a kingdom of the old civilization was depicted, along with many tombs and shrines. Karen jumped up and asked in surprise, but also with joy, if this could really be true. Mirage replied that apparently the Tomb Raiders knew about the ruins and also wanted to take possession of them, and it looks like they went too far again and were left with nothing. Their guild decided to put all their efforts into exploring these ruins, and she came to a conclusion. What exactly is Nenorich most suitable for the closest location of the base? Shiro asked why. Mirage began to explain that the first reason. There is a guild in the city. If they agree, there will be no need to build a guild building, and they will immediately begin research. And the second reason, in Nenorich, there is a shop called Shiro. He has a wonderful assortment. She was sure that his goods would definitely help out the adventurer. Mirage stood up, bowed, and said that they would be grateful if he would consider the offer to locate one of his stores in their headquarters. Karen said that if they wanted to establish their own branch, then what would they demand in return? But Mirage did not even understand what she was talking about. Now, Shiro began to tell what happened with Gabus. He made demands on them. Mirage put down her teacup in irritation and said that it was just insolence. She didn't understand how they dared to demand anything. Shiro also added that they were insulted and harassed a lot. Mirage confirmed that this was simply unforgivable and asked them to remain calm, because since they had already agreed, they did not need to build a headquarters. She would like to hire people from them to build a hotel for adventurers, of course. All the work will be fully paid. They will also need a plot of land, and of course, they will pay rent and taxes. Karen extended his hand to her and said that they would be glad to cooperate. Mirage happily shook her hand and said that they were extremely grateful. Thus, the almost extinct guild became a branch of the best adventurer guild in the country. Emil was so happy that she climbed onto the roof and began to scream joyfully. Shiro, as always, began selling his goods the next day. He turned to Aina and asked her to give him a large box of matches, but the girl did not hear him. He said it in her ear, but it didn't help either. The girl apologized for not hearing him right away and asked if he asked for a mop. Shiro answered that he asked for matches. Aina happily said that she would bring them now. After a while, Shiro suggested that they close the door and asked the girl to clean up, but she didn't hear it the first time. The young man noticed that she had been daydreaming lately. He decided that he would have to ask her. After a while, he counted the money. Aina came up to him. She didn't know how to tell him what she wanted. She fell to her knees. Shiro immediately jumped up to pick her up. All the coins fell from the table. The girl asked for money. Shiro sat down on the floor next to her and asked with a smile how much she needed, but Aina only apologized. Because she was a lot of trouble, the young man stroked her head and said that everything was fine. There was no need to worry. On the contrary, it took her a lot of courage to ask for money, which means she's smart. Shiro asked her if maybe something happened to her mother, and asked to tell him what she knows, but at that moment Lear came to them. He suggested Shiro to go and have lunch. He saw that Shiro was talking with Aina and asked if he had come at the wrong time. At that moment, Karen flew in, who said that they needed to discuss the development of the city, but when she saw such a large number of people in the guild, she realized that it would be better to postpone this conversation. Lear suggested that she come in later. They somehow went in unsuccessfully. Shiro leaned over to Aina and said that Karen and Lear were going to leave, so he asked how she wanted to go. The girl wiped away her tears and said that everything was fine, there was no need to leave. Shiro asked them if they would help with advice. Lear immediately replied that they would help. There, Rolf understands this. Karen said that as the mayor of the city, she wants to help her citizens. She asked to tell what was bothering the girl. She didn't know how to say it, and Shiro told her that he also wanted to help her, so he asked if she would tell. Aina replied that she would tell. The thing was that her mother was sick. When Aina was 4 years old, she lived with her mother and father in love and care. But one day, the city in which they lived was engulfed in the flames of war. Everything turned to ashes. The house, even childhood. But what upset Aina most was not this, but the fact that her father was mobilized and told that it was a civic duty. The war lasted for 6 months, then another year passed and another year passed, and the father never returned. When Aina turned 6, her mother said that they would move to another city, but Aina got carried away, because if they left, their father would not find them. Looking at her daughter, her mother. Without saying a word, she cried and hugged her daughter. After some time, they left the city and, having crossed several borders, reached Norwich. When Aina asked why they chose a city on the outskirts, her mother replied that there were no wars here. They would not lose anyone here, she said, and yet life on the outskirts is simple. Her mother was quite hungry, trying to feed her daughter even 2 years later. The mother fell ill. Lying on the bed, she apologized to her daughter. Aina cried and blamed herself for bringing her mother to such a state. She decided she had to grow up. The girl walked down the street and offered flowers. Aina spent her last money on permission to trade at the market, and from morning until night she walked and sold flowers. That's when she met Shiro. He not only bought a lot of flowers, but also offered her a job. Aina ran happily after selling these flowers, and understood that now it would be much easier for her mother. Aina thanked all the gods she knew. 10 silver were her first salary. She knew from the very beginning what to spend them on. After all, one adventurer told her that he had a potion that could cure any disease. All her fortune went on this potion. Aina even had to lie that it was a gift from Shiro so that her mother would drink it. However, after she drank this potion, nothing changed. Aina was swallowed by impenetrable darkness. She thought about what to do, how to cure her mother, because if there was money, she could be sent to a big city, and there they could cure her. She even asked God to cure her mother, and let everyone hate her, but so that her mother would be healthy. And so she asked Shiro to lend her money. She said this, even if she was disliked, even if she was despised. However, Shiro only gently stroked her head. After hearing this, the guys were surprised, because they didn't know that Aina had such a hard life. Lear punched the wall so hard that it cracked. He asked who the asshole was, who sold her the potion, where the creature was that robbed the defenseless girl. He promised that he would kill it as soon as he saw it. Nesko told Lear not to damage other people's walls, and Rolf went to Aina and said that he was very sorry to tell her this, but the potion he bought her would not cure her mother. The girl asked why. Healing potions only heal external wounds. There are antidote potions that help with poisoning, but there is no potion that could cure. Aina began to say in confusion that the activity told her that when she drinks it, she will recover. Rolf continued to say that he was very ashamed of his colleague, but he deceived her. Aina was shocked by these words and began to whine. Lear kicked the chair and it flew out the window, breaking it. He told Rolf that he was in charge and that he would go and tear off everything he could from this runt. Nesko and Kilf went with him. They went in search of the bandit, and the others decided to visit Aina's mother. They walked sadly. The girl told that the doctor called her mother's illness necrosis. Karen remembered this and said that these were serious illnesses. Shiro asked Rolf in a whisper what kind of illness it was. He replied that this disease makes the limbs stop moving, and it is not uncommon for someone to say that it is an infection, but the actual nature of the disease is unknown, and also, only a few survive. Aina brought the boys to her house. Shiro was very surprised that it was so far from the city. Karen just kept silent. Aina exhaled and happily entered the house. She pulled Shiro along with her and introduced him. The girl's mother did not expect that they would have guests. She introduced herself as Stella and thanked them for looking after her daughter. Shiro replied that it was the other way around, that she was looking after him. Stella began to apologize for not having manners and began to get up. But Shiro began to shout at her and fear to lie down and not get up. Because she needed peace, she recognized Mrs. Karen, and he asked why she had come to see them. Rolf answered that the mayor had learned of her illness and had come to visit her. Karen said that she was very embarrassed that she could not help in any way, to help a resident of her city. Stella, on the contrary, was grateful to her for sheltering them. She asked her daughter if she had already become friends with the mayor. She was very proud of her daughter. Aina answered that she had a lot of new friends, and Shiro, and the mayor, and Rolf. And also Brother Lear, Nesco, Kilfa, and they are very strong. Stella assumed that she must be the happiest girl on earth. Aina answered with a smile that it is so, she is happy. The mother said that it was wonderful. The girl asked her if she had eaten yet and promised to make soup for everyone. She decided to go right now and get water from the river. Rolf said that he would accompany her. When they left, Stella turned to the mayor and asked not to be considered rude. She asked if she could leave her alone with Shiro. She wanted to talk to him. Karen politely replied that of course she would leave. Shiro asked what she wanted to talk about. Stella answered that it concerned Aina. She asked Shiro if he could take care of her after she died. The woman apologized for saying it so quickly, but the thing was that she didn't have much time left, and she also asked if her daughter had told her about the illness. Shiro replied that she did, and she burst into tears. Stella thought so. She always knew that Aina worked a lot and was very tired, and all for the sake of providing for her mother. It was very painful for her, as a mother, to watch all this, but most of all, seeing her daughter's forced smile. Of course, she just wants her not to worry. But lately, something has changed in her. As soon as the conversation turned to Shiro, her smile became natural, innocent and sincere like before. One day, Stella asked her why she was so happy. The girl replied that she had met a very kind brother, and today Stella understood why she was so happy. He looked very much like Aina's dad. When Shiro entered the house, the woman was very surprised. She imagined that her husband had returned. Shiro began to feel somehow uncomfortable about his visit. Stella immediately said that she had not meant that at all, and apologized, but she was very happy that she had given reason to think such a thing. She was glad that he reminded her of his face, which she had already forgotten quite a bit. Thanks to him, she was confident that she would find him in the next world. Shiro asked her why she was saying such a thing, but the girl replied that she already knew. She didn't have long left. She stood up and said that she understood how impudent it was on her part, but still asked if he could take care of her daughter. She was still very small and weak, and she was very worried about her. The woman began to fall. Shiro shouted at her to be careful. Stella fell into his arms. They both looked at each other. Shiro supported her and asked if she was okay and put her on the bed, making sure that everything was fine. He also asked for forgiveness and asked Stella if he could touch her legs a little. The girl did not expect such a request, but she agreed. The young man leaned over and began to feel them. After some thought, he said that he thought so. He thought he understood that she had an illness now and how to cure it. He began to explain that his uncle had an even more severe stage, but now he runs and jumps like a grasshopper, so he will cure her disease. Tears began to appear in the woman's eyes, because she could not believe that she could be cured. She started saying that she didn't want to die. She took his hands and continued, saying that she couldn't leave her little daughter. Shiro told her that everything would be fine, she wouldn't die. At that moment, Karen and Aina with Rolf entered the house. Everyone was very surprised by what they saw, because the woman was crying. No one understood what had just happened. It was very difficult for Shiro to make such a proposal to a woman, but he hoped that she would not misunderstand him. Separately to Corinne, Rolf, and Aina, he explained that the disease that Stella develops throughout her life, in the place where he comes from, it is called a vitaminosis. A vitaminosis is a disease that occurs due to malnutrition, a terrible disease during which the limbs begin to fail, but it is very easy to cure. You just need to get enough vitamins that the body lacks. Aina did not understand what this meant, so she said that Mom was drinking her medicine. Shiro went to his world. He remembered his grandmother's words that if any person gets into trouble, then he must definitely help. Shiro needed to buy something, so he transferred the local money into yen. He bought some vitamins and returned to the world where Stella was sick. He gave her the medicine. He admitted that these pills might look a little inedible, and they were also colored, but this was the medicine that would cure her vitamin deficiency. Stella asked if the medicine wasn't too expensive. Shiro replied that there was no need to worry about it, and they can also return the money later, whenever they want, as long as Aina smiles. When he moved to this city, Aina really helped him get settled here, so now it's his turn to help, so she can drink the medicine with peace of mind. A month passed. Shiro and Aina came to the girls' home. Stella greeted them standing on her feet. Aina asked her mother in surprise if she could really stand on her feet already. She asked if she was feeling better now. The woman replied that she was already feeling much better, so it wasn't as hard for her to stand, just like before. Aina asked her if she could sleep with her now. Stella replied that of course she could, every day, and suggested sleeping together. The girl quickly ran to her mother to hug her and started screaming. Stella apologized for making her worry all the time, but now they will always sleep together. They would continue to live together. Now Shiro closed the door and decided that he could say with complete confidence that he had done what he had to. He returned to his home, sat on the balcony, and began to drink beer. He realized that now the good days would begin, and this is the first good day. With a beautiful sunset, Stella has completely recovered thanks to the vitamins. Now Aina could not sleep all night. Because they talked with her mother all night, she was happy. They had a lot of fun. She also told Shiro that yesterday they cooked soup together. Together they picked flowers that she brought him and also looked at the cat. Aina looked great, and that's the most important thing. Now the Adventurer Guild has officially joined the Fairy Blessing Guild and become its branch. In addition, the Blue Flash Squad has also joined the fairies. Along with this, strong adventurers from all over the world began to come one after another and explore the big forest. Shiro has earned almost 50 million in the past 2 months. If he continues to earn at the same pace, then financial independence will be ensured for him, and that day will come soon. Karen, who came to his house unnoticed, asked what would happen soon. The guy was very scared, and the girl at that moment sat down next to him and said that it was a wonderful evening. Shiro exhaled and admitted that he thought his heart would jump out of his chest from fear. The girl laughed and apologized, and she asked what he was drinking. The young man offered to join in and drink to their city. The girl agreed that on such a day it was definitely possible to drink. Karen really liked the taste of this new sake. She put Shiro's head on her lap. The guy asked her to calm down. The girl in response asked if he was the same guy who gets nervous when he is teased, but if it is true then there is no need to be so naughty. Shiro said that he thinks she has already drunk too much. She approached him again and said that he could move to the city. The guy thanked her, but the girl continued to say that this was not a reward. She wanted to tell him not to be shy about asking her for anything. But Shiro stood up and said that he didn't need that, he just wanted to do what he was good at. Karen said that she understood him, but still he was a hero, about whom songs were composed. The young man was against being addressed as a hero, because he was just a greedy man for money. But he grew up with his grandmother, and she always told him that if people around him were in trouble, he should definitely help them as much as he could, and then if he got into trouble, the people around him would definitely help him too. Corinne asked if she could ask the name of his wonderful grandmother. Her name was Arisu Kawami. Corinne knew her, and asked Shiro if he was the grandson of that immortal witch Arisu, but the guy did not understand what she was talking about. The girl understood him. There were almost no foreigners on their continent. Few people had met her in person. Like her, she first met the witch at the Harvest Festival. She suddenly appeared in the city, drank sake, and danced. Shiro didn't believe that this was possible, because she had disappeared 7 years ago. Corinne remembered the previous year. Well, the immortal witch, Risu, showed her the legendary sword of Mel Gibson's demon, which was made of pieces of stars. But Shiro asked her to stop with her stories. There was too much information for him. He needed to digest it all first. He began to remember what was written when he found his grandmother's letter. It was written that 80 years ago she was a witch who came to Japan from a world called Rufardio. Now he understood it. Karen asked the young man if he knew about the sword of the legendary demon. The guy remembered when as a child he asked who this person was, what was drawn on her wall. His grandmother answered that it was her favorite actor in the world. Mel Gibson. Karen began to understand that, most likely it was true. His grandmother was a witch, because before she had never seen such pills and such items that Shiro sells. She asked him if he had met his grandmother yet. The guy replied that it had been 7 years since he had seen her. He asked to give him a minute, went to the edge of the balcony, took a deep breath, and started shouting if his grandmother was alive. Corinne did not expect this, so she was very surprised. Shiro returned to his world. He couldn't even think that his granny could be alive. Maybe he was drawing conclusions without even knowing what people were saying about it. He thought that his granny would definitely come to the Harvest Festival and went back into the portal. One day ago, Karen told the guy what it meant. His grandmother is an immortal witch, and she disappeared without telling him anything. She understood perfectly well that now he wants to find her, but asked him why he doesn't wait for her in the city. His grandmother appeared here at the Harvest Festival last year. It turns out that this year there will also be a Harvest Festival, and she can appear there. This year, there will be an anniversary in Ninorecha. She wants to hold a large-scale harvest festival, since she is the mayor of the city, about 2 months before the start of the harvest festival. And Karen said that if he wants, Shiro can help with this. Shiro really loved such holidays. Because of this, he agreed, but with 2 conditions. This festival will be with tents, and most likely everyone will have food stalls. But he didn't understand. Was it really so difficult to come up with something other than food? He grabbed his head. Because he understood that there had to be something else, he asked himself to remember what he did as a child, and finally he succeeded. He went to his world and brought cameras from there. Aina, when she saw it, asked what it was. Shiro explained that it was what she had asked about so often. The camera was a great product for a new trade. He decided that it would be better to show everything in action and ask Aina to look at it. He took photos of her and showed them. The girl was very surprised when she saw herself. She asked why she suddenly appeared on paper. She asked if she had become tiny and was trapped. Shiro began to explain that the camera is a magical tool that can instantly draw a person or some landscape. This is a good opportunity, so he offered to take a couple of photos. They did so, and in the end, Aina was very happy and shouted that it was cool. She herself took pictures of Shiro and wanted to take a lot of pictures because she really liked it. The guy posed as best he could, but in the end he said that he thought this product would not be in great demand. The girl asked why. Because she thought the opposite, the young man explained that there are a huge number of cameras. He took one of the cameras and clicked with the flash. He called it a forbidden technique. Aina didn't like this photo because she was squinting there and it turned out ugly. Then the girl herself took some kind of camera and took a photo of the guy. He looked at her and suddenly the image of his grandmother popped into his head. Stella came to them. She turned to Shiro and said that Aina also promised to help her today. The girl happily ran to hug her mother. The guy asked her how they liked the new house, whether they were able to figure it out. The girl thanked him for his help and said that they liked everything. Now Stella and Aina live in the house that he rented as a space for a store. It is a 10-minute walk to the store. Aina turned to her brother and said that her mommy doesn't know how to clean at all. Stella said that it was a little embarrassing and she said that it was not worth talking about it yet. Shiro, without thinking, agreed to help with the cleaning, because they could always ask him for help. But Aina knew that he was also very bad at cleaning. Shiro felt what Stella felt when they said that they didn't know how to clean. Aina said goodbye to the young man. The guy smiled and thanked her for her help. Today, he was counting on her tomorrow and asked Stella to be careful on the way, so they parted. The Silver Moon Adventurers Guild had been rebuilt. When Shiro first opened this door, he only heard Emilia's quiet cries, but now he saw a huge number of adventurers who were discussing their affairs, telling their stories, and giving advice to other adventurers. And somewhere, Cuckoo was crying too loudly. In just 2 months, this guild became the most lively in the country. Emil saw Shiro and called him to her. The guy asked her if something happened while he was gone. The girl came closer to him, started pointing her finger and asking if he just came to see her, if he really decided to give her something, but the guy immediately moved away and said that this was not the case at all. He just wanted to eat with everyone from the Blue Flash, but Emil had already played with her fantasy and continued asking if he really wanted to ask her to become his bride, if he guaranteed lifelong wealth and fame. Then she completely agreed, but the young man said that this was not what he wanted at all. Emil continued to speak, began to stretch out hope and say that he could freely do with her whatever he wanted, because she was one of those who could see and do everything in her power. Shiro yelled at her to stop unbuttoning her buttons and get to work. Emil responded to this by saying that, fortunately, she was on a break right now. She offered him to have a drink with her in the dark and pressed her against the wall, but the young man began to hold her back so that she would not come closer and said that he refused. It is better to stay away from women who offered a drink in the dark. That is the will of his granny, especially since he recently found out that she is alive. The adventurers asked the guys to stop. Emilia asked Shiro what he just said, because she did not understand at all what he was talking about. She looked at his hand and said that their fingers were so passionately intertwined, and until he pushed her away, they could quickly go to the dark room. She promised that he would like it and stretched her lips towards him. Shiro saw in her an ordinary octopus, but Kilf came to his aid in time, knocking Emilia aside. Emilia flew into a barrel, which Kilfa called an octopus trap. She asked Shiro if he was okay. For him, she was a real savior, and now they were drinking calmly in their company. Kilfa stroked the head of a crying Shiro and said that she saved him, and explained Emilia's behavior by saying that when the full moon approaches, rabbits go into heat. But Emilia didn't think so. Neska told Shiro that it would be an unhealthy relationship between a woman and a man if they got together, and Rolf added that he was trying to pluck an unattainable fruit without effort. Emilia said to this that it was very dangerous, at which point everyone yelled at her, asking why she continued to pester Shiro. Suddenly they heard the adventurers arguing among themselves. Mojito started saying that he would pay for the duel, and the wise whip replied that he agreed to this duel because it is the duty of a wise man to teach a fool. People started betting on who would win. Shiro decided that they should be put up, But Lear stopped him and explained that a battle is a calling card for any adventurer, so everyone starts complaining. Adventurers gathered here from all over the world are trying to find the ruins. In other words, even veterans come. It has been 2 months since the Fairy Blessing branch opened here, but no one has been able to find them yet. That's why the competition is growing, and this is the reason for frequent duels. There's nowhere to even have fun in the town, and it's true that they don't have any places to relieve stress in Ninarasha. At that moment, Amelia crawled under the table and Shiro noticed it. The girl asked him to just give her a second chance and asked what he thought about it. They could be alone in the store. She asked if that wasn't perfect. Lear wanted to protect Shiro so that Amelia would leave him alone. But suddenly, Nesko stepped on his foot with her heel. She said that one shouldn't say bad words. He began to explain that, firstly, he never had experience with girls of easy virtue. Nesko hit him on the leg again so that he would stop talking about this topic. Lear asked him to stop stepping on him with his heel. Unexpectedly for everyone, the head of the guild entered the guild. She said that no one should fight in her guild. Everyone immediately stopped, stood up as if nothing had happened, and greeted the head. She approached the table with Shiro and asked what brought him to such an unsightly place. He did not know what to answer, but she did not wait for an answer and asked where Emil was. She was hiding under the table, and the head of the guild immediately understood this. She bent down and asked why she was hiding under the table now. Amelia, with tears in her eyes, wanted to explain, but the mood of the head changed so often that she said that she did not ask her questions. She pulled her into her room by her legs, and Amelia, out of desperation, reached out to Shiro and asked for help. Because his future wife was in a very difficult situation, Shiro did nothing and did not help her in any way. Lear told Shiro that he needed to talk to him. He admitted that in fact he was exploring the ruins in the forest to find a rare flower, but Shiro did not understand what flower he was talking about. The commander began to explain the story from the very beginning. After hearing this, the young man replied that he would go with them. The team happily said that it was just wonderful. Shiro asked them if they would protect him from monsters in return. Lear tensed his biceps and said that he could be 100% sure of that, especially since it couldn't be compared to training at the training ground. Inspired, they drank another glass of beer. Shiro woke up in a clearing and saw a beautiful flower that caught his eye. The name of this flower was Apsara. Such flowers grew only near clean water. The guy exhaled happily, and he said that he felt very good. He would really like Aina to see this. Lear finally found the boys who were lying in the clearing. He started to wake up Neska, who loved to sleep very much, and told her that it was time for them to go. Shiro apologized, but he had been walking for almost half a day, so he wanted to rest. Lear told them that they needed to get there before sunset. If they managed to keep to the schedule, then they could rest as much as they wanted. A week ago, this flower called Apsara was found by Blue Flash when she was exploring the ruins. From this flower, high-level recovery potions could be made. On the way home last time, the guys couldn't deliver the flower. It wilted. It turned out that Apsara dies just a couple of hours after it was picked. Nesko said that, of course, it's not good to maintain the right temperature. With the help of Ice Mage, they won't be able to deliver the flowers to the pharmacy on time. They almost gave up. But Lear remembered that they have Shiro, who knows different tricks. Shiro had nothing to hide anymore. One of his abilities is spatial storage. It is his cheat skill that frees him from the flow of time. He can not only carry things with him, but also store them with absolutely zero mass. They collected a large number of flowers, so they decided that it was time to wake up Kilfa and set out. But suddenly, everyone sensed an enemy nearby. But they didn't immediately understand who it was. The enemy was attacking from above. Deer told Shiro not to move, and not to say anything. The monsters flew past, and many had scratches. The scratches were from something sharp, most likely a trace of a fight with other large predators. Lear realized that these monsters had noticed them after all, and they needed to defend themselves. He told Ralph to guard Shiro and Neska to use magic. She used fire arrows, and a very large number of monsters fell down. Ralph shouted to Shiro that they were being attacked from behind. Kilfa tried to block the attack with her kunai, but it bounced off the armor, and the monsters were distracted by her. But she already had a plan. She told Neska that it was time to attack, and the sorceress used lightning. The insects fell to the ground dead. Shiro realized that their weakness was fire. He grabbed a can of gas from his pocket, ran forward. Ralph tried to stop him. He shouted that bear spray would not work against these flying insects, but Shiro replied that it was okay. The situation had changed, so he would try something else. He lit a lighter and put it in front of the can of gas, and then he pressed the spray and got a pseudo flamethrower. Lear looked at this and thought that Shiro was a sorcerer. A moment later, the young man shouted to Ralph that it was time to attack. He took out his weapon and said that he understood. He killed the monster that Shiro had set on fire, and Lear happily said that they were doing well, that they were winning. Shiro saw how the boys were really getting stronger, even though they had just been training at the training ground. Suddenly, someone shouted to be careful. Nescu started to get attacked. Shiro took out his gas canister, but he was too close to her. If he used it, then Nescu would get hit. Shiro had a difficult choice. The girl had already started to be beaten, so Shiro covered her with himself and told her to be careful. The boy saw one of the monsters attacking him from behind and shouted at him, but it was too late. The insect sank its pincers into Shiro's throat. Lear shouted at the boy to jump into the river. Shiro did so. He jumped on, and the insect immediately flew away, but the guy began to drown. Nesco used the seal of the spirit of water. She asked to give Shiro her gift of water. Lear shouted to Shiro that he needed to get to the riverbank. They would definitely find him, he just needed to wait. Time passed. Shiro reached some shore. He began to come to his senses. He asked for help from the blue flash, but did not understand where they were. He vaguely saw some girl in front of him who asked if he was alive, if he could hear her. The guy all wet got up and said that he could hear, but fell again. The girl asked him if he hadn't heard of the fairy tribe. Shiro saw the fairy for the first time. She asked him not to look at her with such a look. It embarrassed her very much. The guy apologized. The fairy turned to him again and asked if he could say something while looking at her. The guy thought that she wanted him to introduce himself, but that was not the case at all. The fairy began to ask him what he thought she had noticed on the riverbank. If she had not helped him, he would have already become food for predatory fish. The guy immediately began to thank her, but she was still interested in how he could have been carried away by the river. Did he really have such a hobby? Shiro replied that he did not do it on purpose, and it was a very long story. The fairy understood what it meant. He was running from monsters. And laughing, she said that he was weak. She asked where he was going. The guy answered that he was going to the north of the forest, near the city of Ninorecha. The fairy was very surprised and said that it was a human village, and asked if he could take her with him to Ninorecha. Shiro did not expect such a request. The fairy began to have tears in her eyes. She began to sniffle and ask if he would not take her. The guy answered that he would, but he was interested in why she should go to Ninorich. The fairy began to explain that her friend lived there. He was taller than Shiro, thin and weak. He smiled when he was happy. He had sky blue hair and eyes. She asked the young man if he understood her now. Shiro answered that he did not, because he did not know everyone by sight only because they were of the same race. She asked what his name was, but she didn't remember the name. He was the only person she had met. She called him just a man. He said that he came to this forest to hunt monsters. Shiro told her that it was some kind of romance. To meet in the forest, he asked the fairy if they had really met. She hit him on the head and called him a fool. After all, people and fairies can't really meet. She thinks he's her best friend, probably, so it would be wonderful to meet him again. Shiro asked her if the fairy was familiar with this forest. She replied that of course she was, because she was born and raised here. The young man offered to make a deal. He would take her to the forest near the city of Ninorichi, and she would lead him to the north of this forest. The fairy was very surprised at first, and then asked if he would really take her with him right to Ninrik. If this was really so, then he could rely on her, and she would also protect him, because she could attack with the speed of the wind. She showed how she could attack. Shiro was simply in shock. Everything disappeared in front of them. He told her that she had gone a little too far. The fairy agreed that she could not control her magical power, but there was nothing wrong with that. Because it was powerful, she just wanted to surprise him, and so she drove away the flock of beetles. Now the young man understood where those beetles that attacked them came from, and why they had such deep scratches. He said that they seemed to have come to an agreement, and added that he was pleased to meet her. He introduced himself, as did Pati. Shiro assumed that since he would be leading them, then he would be the captain. But Fairy did not agree. She said that from now on she was his boss. The guy called her boss without resistance. Pati was happy, because she was number one again. Shiro started asking how she liked the boss or the captain more. The fairy did not understand what kind of strange manner of speech he now had. The young man explained that he was just trying to talk like a child. Pati discontentedly asked him not to talk like that anymore. The guy replied that he understood her. He would no longer behave like a child. Night came, so Shiro made a fire and happily sat next to it and warmed himself. The fairy asked him if he wanted to go back, if he missed his friends. Shiro assumed that his friends probably weren't even looking for him. The fairy was surprised, and she said that everything was decided. She would help him find friends. Shiro thanked her. Pati explained that it was because she was his boss. She asked if he was hungry, because he was her subordinate. and especially for him. She had something in her spatial storage. The young man was very surprised when he saw that she had it too. She took out an apple from her storage, which she immediately bit into. Shiro was more surprised that she had the same abilities as him. The fairy did not understand this, so she asked what happened. Was it really the first time he saw a spatial storage? She explained that all fairies have such an ability, and such a storage is not at all rare. No one would be surprised by this anymore. She took out a bottle of honey and said that she had prepared it herself. The drink was supposed to warm Shiro's body. The guy tried it and happily said that it was really very tasty. The happy fairy said that he could drink more. She promised that she would keep an eye on him, so as soon as he drank, he should go to bed right away. This was her order. The guy relaxedly turned to her, and he thanked for the care. The night passed. Shiro woke up. Pati, sitting on his head, said that in this forest, in addition to fairies, there are many other different races, goblins, orcs, scary ogres, and so on. She showed where the elf village used to be. They walked some distance and Shiro, out of breath, asked if he could at least rest a little. The fairy was very surprised that he got tired so quickly, but allowed him to rest just a little, and flew around the area. She said that the nectar of the babuna flower has a strange taste. She accidentally licked it, so she understands what she is talking about. Shiro was shocked by such a large amount of information that no adventurer knows. Now he knew that it seems that long before she was born, there used to be a country called Jigina. But she disappeared many years ago, and it seems that now they began to call it the Forest of Jigina. The young man asked Pati if he understood correctly that this country was from the era of an ancient magical civilization. The fairy replied that she did not know this, because it was long before her birth. But suddenly she heard something and said that someone was coming. She ordered her subordinate to hide. They were adventurers looking for Shiro. Rolf was shouting that if he could hear them, he needed to give a sign. Lear was leaning towards the waterfall with tears in his eyes and saying that Shiro could have fallen from it and died. He didn't want to believe it. Neska was telling him not to talk about it, because he was definitely alive. Kilfa was jumping and looking for Shiro. Shiro himself rose from behind the bushes. Pati told him not to get up, but Shiro explained that they were his friends. Everything was fine. They were just looking for him. Fairy did not expect to hear this. The adventurers heard a rustling sound in the bushes and realized that whoever made it was where Kilf was now flying. And she had already found him. She hit the bird so that it would let go and jump on the young man. It landed right on him. The adventurers heard this and immediately ran towards the sound. The girl had tears in her eyes. She was whining and saying that they thought he was dead, but he was alive, and started kissing him. All the guys ran to him, and the guy told them that everything was okay, no need to cry. Lear knelt down with Neska, and they started saying that they were very sorry, because if it weren't for them, everything would have been fine. Shiro saved their lives twice. Shiro was very surprised by this, and asked if he understood correctly that he was with his friends again, or maybe he wasn't in the Blue Flash. Lear replied that of course Shiro was a member of their team, and Rolf added that it seemed that the gentleman was completely safe while they were gone, and Shiro explained that someone had been found who had helped him. He told Pati that she could stop hiding. He introduced her and told her what he knew. The guys listened to him and were very surprised, so they asked him to explain. The fairy tribe was always called a ghost race. They never appeared in front of other races. And he tells them that the fairy is his boss. Pati looked out from behind the tree and said that, firstly, they have a law that prohibits leaving the village. She flew closer to Shiro. He confirmed that this is so. Since the name of the guild is Blessing of Fairies, the name speaks for itself. Pati asked why they had to bless people so easily. Shiro suggested that maybe it all started with a blessing from a fairy. Nesko asked him if he had forgotten. The girl realized that he didn't know about it at all. After he asked in surprise what she was talking about, the girl began to explain that the origin of the Fairy Blessing Guild is the name of sake, which can only be produced by the fairy tribes. This drink is known as fairy honey. Shiro asked if this could be the same honey that she had already treated him to, and it was surprisingly very tasty. The adventurers were very surprised. Nesko ran up worriedly and began to ask if he had really drunk it, this fabulous honey. Lear asked if he really drank this mead, because it is a legendary drink. For one mug you can buy yourself an entire castle. According to the guild records, the last time it was put up for auction was 200 years ago. Shiro was very surprised. Pati explained that he is her subordinate. That is the only reason she gave him this mead to drink. Shiro realized that he needed to explain a little. He did so. After that, the adventurers immediately understood what was happening. The fairy saved him. Lear thanked Pati for saving their friend and asked to contact him. If anything, He would help in any way he could, and not only as a thank you. Shiro asked if he could help. In this case with the search for one person, Lear asked what kind of person. Pati began to explain that his eyes and hair were the color of heaven. She could not say anything yet, but she would definitely try to be useful. Since they had met so successfully, it was time to head back to Ninorich. When they came close to it, Pati screamed very happily, because she had not seen a human village for a very long time. Neska corrected her that it was not a village, but a city. The name changes depending on the size of the settlement. Pati said that she understood this and suggested going to the city. Lear laughed and said that it was very hard for the ward. They entered the city. The fairy saw a sad girl and asked who it was. It was Aina. Shiro asked her what she was doing here. She ran up and hugged him. She addressed him with tears. The guy did not understand what was happening. Stella appeared behind them and was also glad to see them. She explained that Aina hadn't been able to sleep all night and had been thinking about them all the time. The adventurers said goodbye and left, and Shiro offered to help carry Aina. But Stella didn't agree, because she felt that if she didn't take a little more, she wouldn't be able to carry her. So while she wants to do it, the guy agreed, but asked that if she can't, she should tell him about it. But Stella replied that she wouldn't tell him, because she doesn't want to give Aina away. She's her mother. He took them home and said goodbye, wished them good night. Stella remembered that she had forgotten to tell him something and congratulated him on his return. The guy thanked her for this. He returned to his home. The party flew out and asked if this was really all his house. It was huge. The guy asked what kind of houses the fairies live in. She began to explain that they build houses high in the trees to protect themselves from monsters. But she asked him to tell her if he had forgotten anything. The guy replied that of course not. They still need to find her friend. But the city is small, so he thinks it will be quick. They will start tomorrow. Patty happily agreed. Shiro suggested that it was very difficult for her to make fairy honey, but Patty replied that it was as easy as pie, as long as there was honey. But getting honey was very difficult. The last time she barely escaped from the bees, the guy took out a jar of honey and asked if it would work. The fairy replied that it would work, but when she realized that he had a whole jar in his hands, she asked in shock if it was real. The guy answered that it was completely natural honey straight from the apiary. Pati tried it and said that it was simply delicious. It would make the sweetest fairy tale honey. Shiro suggested going to bed already. He finally wanted to sleep on something soft, so they did. Morning came and Aina woke up Shiro. She climbed on top of him. Shiro asked her what she was doing there. Since today was a day off at the store, the girl took out a bag and answered that her mother asked her to bring him something to eat. Then she immediately asked him who was on his head. Shiro remembered that Pati was lying on him and said that he would introduce them now. For Aina, the fairy was just like in the books. Pati asked what kind of child it was. Shiro answered that she helps him around the store. The guys went out onto the balcony together, and Aina asked if she knew a man with sky blue eyes and hair. The girl thought about it and replied that she didn't remember anyone like that. Shiro decided to look for him from the very beginning. He understood that of course they didn't know everyone by sight, but the city was small. If they asked around, they would definitely find him. Petty was happy with this plan. Pati said she would help them, and added that first they would need to hide Pati somewhere, like in her backpack, and that worked. They went out into the city together, and so their search began. The guys started asking everyone they knew and all passers-by about this man, but no one had ever seen anyone like him. The old woman, who, it would seem, should have known everyone, answered that if you knew the name of the wearer on the necklace, you could look for it. But she didn't know it. The guys even asked the guy who deceived Aina and paid for it, but all was in vain. Shiro sat under a tree and looked at the necklace. They had already interviewed 27 people, and there were still 0 leads. Aina suggested that perhaps he was not a local at all, but Pati replied that he told her he was from Ninorich. Their only clue was the same necklace as Pati. Shiro printed out a photo taken with a recently acquired camera. Unexpectedly, Karen met them on the street. She told Shiro that she had heard rumors that he was walking around with an Azure Flash again, and that he was making her worry again. The guy apologized for this, but the girl replied that he didn't have to apologize. The main thing was that he was unharmed, and patted him on the head. Aina noticed that the young man's face turned red and drew attention to it. The guy felt awkward and said that it was all because of the heat. He remembered about the necklace and asked Karen if she recognized it. The girl looked and admitted that it was a very interesting pendant, and it seemed that she had seen it somewhere, but she couldn't remember where. But if she finds out or remembers anything, be sure to tell him. The merchant thanked her for her help, but in response, Karen thanked him because he had done so much for her. It was time to say goodbye. The girl still needed to go to the guild. The guy asked in surprise, "Why? Really, Emil?" The mayor replied that it was not for that. She needed the Azure Flash that put her precious friend in danger. She was furious. Shiro shouted after her that he went of his own free will, but she no longer listened to him. She wished them luck and left, but Shiro understood that luck was more needed by Lear and the other guys, and after that, Aina asked Shiro that she wanted to sleep together. Shiro asked Patty if she could sleep with her and look after her. She sighed and replied that nothing could be done, and only today she would do it. Aina returned home. The first thing she did was turn to her mother and say that she would show her something now, but before she started, she asked if she would tell anyone. Stella was very surprised at first, but then laughed and replied that of course she wouldn't tell. Then Aina began to open her backpack. Stella began to think who could be there. It was unlikely that there would be a lizard or a frog, but when she saw what was inside, she was very surprised. Patty, when she saw Stella, noticed that Aina looked very much like her mother. The woman did not expect to see a fairy, so she was in complete shock. But soon it passed. Patty happily jumped on the bed and said that it was very soft. She had never lain on anything like this, and Aina and Stella looked at her happily and giggled. Mom made tea and put it on the table. She asked if it was possible to find out more about the young man she met in the forest. Aina also wanted to hear it. Patty thought about it and said that they had persuaded her. She began to tell what it was like when she first left the village. When she met him, he was hunting. He was very clumsy with arrows. The horned hare was constantly running away from him, and with each shot it seemed that he was about to burst into tears like a little doll. And it was funny, Patty watched him and laughed heartily. But she had to help him because he was crying so loudly that it soon began to irritate her. She killed the hare, and the guy's eyes widened in surprise, and he asked her, "Is she really a fairy?" That's how they met. The boy cried and cried, saying how delicious horned hares were. At first, Patty thought that people had a very stupid language, but after listening to him, she learned that he had not eaten for 10 days because he could not catch anyone. The guy thanked her again for saving him, and for the prey, he asked her what her name was. Patty thought whether she should tell him or not. She asked him not to approach her and promised to tell him when he became a real hunter. They started hunting together. The guy had both successes and failures, but every day he got better. And one day, he brought Patty to the wolf's prey. He said that he had become much more skillful, and perhaps it was time to tell the secret of his name. The fairy agreed to tell. But as soon as she was about to speak, she remembered how she was called a little bitch, from whom only troubles came, so her mood immediately went down, and she promised to tell next time. The hunter remained silent, but agreed with her. But there was no next time. They were friends, two lonely hearts. It turns out that when they met, they became two-legged, so she had to tell him her name and ask him what his name was. Such an extraordinary story happened to them. She felt something dripping on her head and asked if it was raining. She raised her head and saw tears appearing in Aina's eyes. She told Patty that they would definitely find him, her friend. Stella looked at this with affection. In another place, 2 hours earlier, Shiro returned from his world and happily said that he had not washed himself at home for a long time, and this was a real pleasure. He was going to look at the sunset sky of Ninorich. But suddenly Lear came to him, who called him to go down. The guy went down and saw something he did not expect. Lear had bruises on his face, so he asked what happened. His cheek was swollen. He replied that it was nothing. In fact, Karen came to him and began to figure out why the adventurers took Shiro with them into the forest. Lear immediately said that he was not going to make excuses, and she could not hold back, hit him with her fist, or slap him. A moment later, the girl punched him in the face. Now Lear offers Shiro to have a drink in the guild. This time the guild master and Emi will be with them. Shiro happily agreed. They went to the guild, where they were already expected. They began to drink beer and laugh happily, discussing their topics. Lear noticed that Shiro was thinking about something and asked what happened. The guild leader asked if he didn't like the local ale. The guy answered that, to be honest, he didn't like it a little, unfortunately, but the girl answered that there was no need to worry about it, because she also considered it tasteless. She admitted that it was not nice to say such things in front of everyone, but in these parts the choice was very limited. If there was an opportunity to make something tasty, it would be wonderful and would calm down, and perhaps even satisfy the adventurers. But transporting alcohol would be very expensive. Kilfu said that she would drink wine or cider. They are sour, but smell very tasty. Nescu asked her not to be impudent, and Shiro thought about it. Lear asked him again what he was thinking about. Did he really want to say that he had never drunk wine, or that successful merchants like him only drank high-quality wines, worthy of the nobility? The guy answered that this was not at all true, because he had a lot of cheap wine in his homeland. Basically, there were 3 types: red wine, white, and pink. Someone calls it rose. He also heard that orange wine has been gaining popularity lately, and in general there are a lot of different brands on the market. There is a wide variety of different flavors: sweet, semi-sweet, with a light airy taste, and with a deep, refined taste, and the prices for wines vary widely. Some wine can be afforded even by a child with pocket money, and some will compete with an entire house with a plot of land. Special connoisseurs add a glass of wine to their dinner repertoire, each time changing the brand. Well, Shiro rather prefers sake. There are also 3 main types: Jinsei, Junmai, Honjozo. All the adventurers heard this and turned their attention to the guy. Everyone listened to him very carefully and asked him to continue. Shiro happily continued to say that his family cares about the public interest, so you can easily get a variety of wines. Everyone became even more interested, so the guy thought it was a great idea. It was a huge business idea. If everything went well, he would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, even 3. He decided to make an announcement. He began to pack his things and asked the people to return here in 3 days, and he would treat them to wine from his homeland. That day, that night, Shiro seemed to have been replaced. He came to his store, completely changed his style of clothing, changed his hairstyle, his appearance completely changed. Aina and Stella said that Shiro's brother was very cool. Today, they were worried that something terrible would happen, but he became a real handsome man. The guy said in response that the new uniform suits them too, and Stella looks like a real professional. Shiro's new bar opened, and the counter was made especially for this day. Located in the beer guild, they knocked it together from plywood and wooden boxes. Lear came to them first and was very surprised when he saw that everything was ready, and Shiro found some nice ladies to help him. Shiro didn't even know how to explain it, because Aina herself ran up to him and said that she would help him. It looked strange that an 8-year-old girl was in a drinking establishment. She also said that she would take her mother with her. She would also help. She asked the young man if it was possible to do so. The guy answered that it was possible. Nesko and Kilfa also helped him. The sorceress made ice for bottles of alcohol. The cat girl laid everything out in barrels. Shiro told them that as a thank you they could take 1 bottle of their choice. Kilfa chose fruit wine, and Nesko took chocolate liqueur. The merchant did not forget about Aina. The girl answered happily that she wanted grape juice. The adventurers already wanted to go to the new bar as soon as possible and get drunk. Shiro turned to them and asked for forgiveness for making them wait. He declared the evening of gratitude to the workers open. Everyone happily ran into the tavern. The young man again drew attention to himself and said that first of all he wanted to thank them for devoting so much time to studying their forest. He introduced himself as the owner of this store. As a reward for their tireless and risky search for lost ruins, he offers part of their supplies completely free of charge. They can also enjoy a wide range of different snacks. The adventurers were surprised that he had so much alcohol and asked if he really made a brewery here, and many did not care at all what to drink, because they were already tired of drinking ale. They wanted something else. Shiro decided that it was worth clarifying that all the drinks were on him. He asks them to drink enough to bankrupt him. The costs of this event amounted to 3 million. Shiro knew that it was a lot, but investing in the future is a very important part of business. He asked to pay attention to the head, who would say a few words. She greeted everyone and wished everyone a safe journey in their search. From that moment, they could start drinking. But as soon as the crush and some excitement began, Mirage slammed her heel on the floor and said that they could end the event. Everyone immediately listened to her and stood in line. Shiro asked Lear what he wanted. The adventurer asked for beer, which Shiro himself recommended to him. Aina added that she was told that if you squeeze a little lemon in here, it will be even tastier. Lear tried to do so. The adventurer tried it, and it was really delicious, so much so that he called it a divine drink. He began to describe that it was slightly foamy, and the lemon gave it a little sourness. After hearing this, everyone immediately began to ask for the same. Shiro did not expect such a stir. Everyone started trying it and saying that it was very tasty. Shiro started giving tasks to Stella. It was unusual for her, but she tried to help. The reaction was higher than Shiro expected. A man came up and asked with a smile for something strong. Everyone immediately fell silent, because the man who asked to pour the strongest thing he had was the indestructible Eldos, one of the 16 heroes. Shiro took out a drink with a smile that would suit him, a drink that could ignite the insides called Spiritus. Eldos sniffed it, because he did not understand why he poured it into some kind of cap. He got angry and began to ask if he really considered him a 200-year-old dwarf, a cutie. Shiro began to answer that this was not at all true, because just one sip of this drink was enough to keep you on your feet. It was 96% alcohol. Eldos thought that he was being cheeky again, because nothing affected him. Nothing at all. Shiro asked him to be calmer, because you can die from an alcohol overdose. Eldos mumbled and said that he understood him. He tore off his clothes and began to shout furiously, calling Shiro outside to start a duel. The adventurers who were standing nearby were very afraid for Shiro's life, because if he lost, and most likely he would lose, they would not see any more drinks. But Rolf approached them in time, introduced himself, and said that he served Florina, the goddess of the sky. The dwarf asked if he was really going to lecture him now and called him a priest. He began to explain that this boy had insulted his honor, because for them, dwarves, who grew up with a barrel of ale in their hands instead of a bottle of milk, alcohol is like blood flowing in their veins. This drop that Shiro poured is nothing for them. Rolf replied that he understood him. His anger was justified, and then he had one proposal. Eldos became interested, and Rolf began to explain that the priest can heal not only poisoning, but also alcohol intoxication. For this they use the antidote spell. If suddenly Eldos still gets drunk and cannot stand on his feet, he will immediately heal him, and asked Shiro what he thought about this. Shiro immediately agreed, and Eldos said that he was not against it either. He began to shout that it was not for them to doubt his fortitude. No one could even imagine how many monsters he had crossed the tip of his axe with, and with the demon lord, the ancient dragon, the 1,000-year golem, a squad of goblins, the king of the undead, the giant ghoul, the Cerberus, the immortal berserker, the king of vampires, and not once did his knee touch the ground. He listed all the monsters he fought. The adventurers were very surprised, because they were all legendary monsters. This is what they expected from such a hero. After such a cool presentation, he seemed to look even bigger. He asked Shiro where his strong drink was. He promised that if he faltered even a little, he would fulfill any of his wishes. Shiro asked what would happen if he did not falter. Eldos replied that he would pour him drinks for free until the end of his days. He handed him a large glass and said to fill it to the brim. Shiro did just that. He poured the whole bottle into a glass. Eldos sniffed it and felt that the drink really had a strong smell. He had never smelled anything like it before, and he began to drink it like regular beer. He drank it all down to the last drop. The adventurers looked at him in shock, but Shiro was the most surprised. He did not understand how he was able to drink it in one gulp. Eldos admitted that there really was a fire burning inside. He put the mug down, and he asked Shiro what he would say now. Whether he looked drunk, everyone fell silent. Shiro admitted that he had underestimated him, so he admitted his defeat. Eldos began to laugh and say that now it was time to pour him a drink for free. He started laughing even louder, thinking that now he was truly invincible, and now he would never leave this bar. But a moment later he fell unconscious on the floor. Everyone started to worry. Eldos was brought to his senses. Shiro turned to him and reminded him that he had warned him that he should drink a little. If it weren't for Rolf's healing magic, he wouldn't be sitting with them like this, and it makes no difference whether he's a hero or someone else. The adventurers began to talk among themselves that it was the first time they'd seen someone scold a hero like that, and alcohol was the first thing that brought him to his knees. Some even suggested renaming the drink Hero Tamer. Soon it spread across the continent. Several hours passed in the bar. All the adventurers were lying on the floor because they drank too much beer. Neska said that she had never drunk such a delicious thing in her life. Kilfa supported her and added that she would treat her parents to this drink, but they remained in their homeland. Lyra approached Shiro and asked if he would go bankrupt from such actions. Shiro admitted that they had to spend a lot, but it was nothing compared to the future profit. Lyra, when he heard this, laughed and said that you could immediately see an entrepreneur in him. Shiro did not deny this and added that now the adventurers would be able to get rid of stress, and Aina would be able to calmly come for medicine. Kilfa perked up, hit Shiro on the back, and called him a good guy. Lyra asked the guy if he had achieved his goal, but Shiro did not understand what he was asking about. The adventurer noticed an out-of-place box from which something similar to a fairy feather was sticking out. Shiro realized that they had been burned. He asked the fairy if she had found her friend among the adventurers. She sadly answered that she had not found one. Shiro realized that it meant he was not an adventurer at all. She was more sad because the guy had arranged such an event for her, but she still hadn't found her friend, and in the end, the boss's friend wasn't found either tomorrow or the day after, although she was waiting for him. Neither surveys throughout the city with a necklace in hand, nor leaflets with signs pasted up yielded results. Shiro asked her again that perhaps he had left Ninarek. After all, because there were many more cities besides this one, Aina also supported the fairy. She understood this there. But her mood did not change. Karen came to Shiro, bringing something with her, and said that she seemed to understand what they were looking for. She opened the chest and explained, she became very interested in their topic of searching. Returning home, she began to dig around and found something, the necklace that they needed. This necklace belonged to her great-great-grandfather, the first mayor of this city. Vina asked her brother who the great-great-grandfather was. Shiro explained to her what a family tree was. Karen asked why they needed her great-great-grandfather. Shiro did not know how to explain, but suddenly Fairy entered the conversation, who said that she needed him. Karen was very surprised when she saw and heard the fairy. She asked what was going on here. Shiro began to explain. After a while, the mayor said that now everything was clear to her, but to be honest, she found it hard to believe. But it turns out that her great-great-grandfather was acquainted with the fairy. The fairy asked her, "Will he tell me where he is now?" Karen was very pleased when she heard this question. The fairy began to explain that since Karen was his family, she should know where he was now. The girl still did not understand what this fairy was saying, and then she guessed. She turned to Patty and asked how long fairies live on average. She replied that the leader told her that they live about 3,000 years, although she herself has only lived 300. So far, Karen explained that most people do not live to be 100 years old. That is, her great-great-grandfather, whom she is looking for. He had been dead for a long time. Patty refused to believe it. Memories of her past began to surface in her head. Everyone was shouting that she was a leper and didn't want to talk to her, and many didn't understand why the leader hadn't driven her out of the village yet because she was cursed. Patty sat alone and understood that no one cared about her. Her parents hated her, and if she disappeared, they would only be happy, so she broke the rules of the village and ran away, flying into the pitch-black moonless night. And then she met that guy. She met him all alone and scared. For the first time, someone looked at her with such kind eyes, and for the first time, someone thanked her for saving her. For the first time, she met a person who spoke to her with such a smile. They had a great time together. They studied, ate, hunted. For the first time, Patty had someone to have fun with. She had someone to argue with. For the first time, she learned so that there is a person in this world who will protect her with all his might. One day, he made them both a necklace from the stone he found in the forest. They were supposed to become a symbol of their friendship. Patty was very surprised, because for the first time, someone gave her a gift. The guy told her that even if they separated, they would always remember each other. Now they were true friends. Patty could not believe that without even having a single friend, she suddenly found herself a true friend. The hunter told her that a true friend is a person who is more important to her than just a friend. He saw that she started to cry and asked if everything was okay. She answered that it was not true, because she did not know how to cry. For the first time, she thought that she did not want to lose him. The man asked her if she could tell him her name. Patty agreed, but at that moment she thought that if she told him her name, they would never see each other again, so she began to doubt it very much. And again she promised to tell him next time, as soon as they meet, that's what she would call him. It seemed to her that their warm relationship would come to an end, so she couldn't say her name. The guy didn't understand this at first, but then he smiled and said that he would look forward to this moment. After hearing from Corinne, Patty said that she understood everything and asked again if the hunter would really never return, since the only place she could call home was next to him. She wanted to say something else, but Shiro turned to her. And he asked what she was going to do now, whether she was going to go home to the other fairies. Patty replied that she had nowhere to go. She didn't tell them, but she was banished. She removed the bandages from her stomach and showed her seal. Shiro asked what it was, and she replied that this symbol among fairies means trouble catcher. That's why she regretted being born so many times. This seal is the reason why even her parents abandoned her. Until recently, they surprisingly allowed her to stay in the village, but now a large swarm of beetles appeared in the forest. They killed 1,000 fairies, started hunting them. When they create a nest, they begin to reproduce. They devour everything in the area. And Patty is to blame for all this. That's why her clan treats her so badly. Shiro shouted that these are all stupid excuses. She couldn't do anything about the beetle nest. Patty replied that she could, because she was cursed, and the chieftain gave her the name. In the language of fairies, it means the one who makes fate cry, despite the given name. The chief himself suggested to banish her, and Patty could agree that it was very funny. But after this banishment, she met Shiro. She saved a drowning idiot, thinking that he would help her find a friend. But it turns out she was an even bigger idiot. Aina started to cry. Because Patty's story touched her very much, the fairy started to calm her down and say that if she cries, something might happen. Shiro thought about it and asked the fairy if he could join the chase. He asked the party if she wanted to save the fairies. She immediately replied that, of course she did. Shiro asked her if she was sure. because they were still the ones who banished her. The fairy thought about it and replied that the chief gave her a name, she was in debt, and besides, her mom and dad were in the village. They may hate her, but they are her parents, and of course she wants to save them all, so Shiro decided that they could try to save them all. Party was touched and asked if they could really save them. Shiro answered that of course they could. Aina began to say that she was also begging Shiro to save them. The guy answered them that everything had already been decided. They would go to help. But before that, they need to stop by the Adventurers Guild. When the adventurers heard Shiro talking about fly swatters, they thought he was some kind of crazy person, and the guild leader was answering Shiro's request at that moment. She said that she couldn't accept this offer because it was impossible to fulfill it 200%. Shiro didn't understand why exactly 200. The girl explained that the fly swatter nest would be a very large, serious military operation, so large that she would need half the people from the guild. Shiro immediately began to believe that half of the entire guild would cost them a lot. The guild leader continued to say that this is not all. They will lose people. Many seekers are currently busy with the ruins. It would be a different matter if the fly swatters nested near Ninorich, but this is not the case at all, so she asked Shiro not to be offended, and it was already time for her to return to work. The guy asked her to stop. He asked her what would happen if it was not an offer, but a deal. The girl became interested. The young man opened his spatial storage. When the girl saw this, she was very surprised, and Shiro began to explain what he was offering. While the fairy's blessing explores the dungeon, he will supply them. He thinks it will fully compensate for the time spent hunting for fly swatters. He asked the head what she would say about this. She replied that it is definitely an attractive offer, however. She has an artifact, enchanted magic, and spatial storage, and perhaps she will be able to carry 3 times more with it. Shiro did not expect such a response, and the girl replied that she still could not agree to this. Suddenly, a hero entered the guild and asked Shiro if he was in trouble. This hero was Eldos. He asked Shiro what his problems were. The boy fearfully apologized for the noise, but he would like the fly swatter nest to be cleaned out. Eldos thought about it and said that it was a great idea. He accepted his request. The young man was very surprised. He asked in surprise why he agreed so quickly. The hero answered that he hoped. He had not forgotten about their dispute. They had an agreement on drinking. Shiro remembered this, but the problem was that now it was impossible to organize a mass persecution, so said nay. Eldos grinned, and he asked not to compare himself with the rest of the little things, because he alone is more than enough. Shiro's friends came, and Lear said that they would help him. She didn't say to this that it was against the guild rules to take on quests that were not given to the guild itself. She couldn't approve of this. Eldos told her that she had misunderstood everything. Lear agreed with him and explained to Nay that the old man was simply paying tribute to Shiro, and they were simply helping without receiving a reward. Nesco supported them and said that it wasn't considered a quest until they got a reward, and of course they would help if their friend was in trouble. Shiro thanked everyone for their help and suggested a drink to celebrate when it was over. The other adventurers heard this and asked if he was talking about that delicious alcohol. The young man replied that it was true, but there was no need to spread it around. But among the alcohol that he had prepared for the holiday, there might be some fairy honey. He had a little of it left. The adventurers could not believe what they heard and asked if he really had this legendary drink. For its sake, they agreed to help with fly swatters. Nay did not understand what was happening and told them that they could not do this because she had ordered to search for the ruins. And there is still no proof that Shiro has real honey. Aina came with her backpack and said that it was real, and Pati flew out of her bag, who said that she made this honey herself, so it was real. Shiro asked why she revealed herself. Nay didn't expect to see a fairy. Shiro realized that there was no point in hiding anymore and began to introduce her. He explained that she is the one who wants the extermination of fly swatters. She wants to save her brothers, this is her desire, but he is a simple merchant and cannot fight monsters or anything like that, therefore. He has to do this to save them. He bowed. Pati did not think that Shiro was capable of such a thing. Aina joined him, who also began to beg Nay to help save Pati's family. The fairy flew up to her and said that if they dealt with the bugs, she would make honey for everyone in the guild. They begged her for help to save them, and the family, Nay, said that it was cruel, because Shiro was making her out to be a villain, and she began to say the phrase that with the power given to her by the guild, she orders the bronze rank and above to gather and set out. Their mission is to capture a nest of fly swatters, deep within the eastern forests known as the Jagina Forest. Time passed, people were already in the forest, and they supposedly came to the place where the fly swatters were hiding. Pati confirmed that this was the place they needed. She said that because of the nest, the fairies cannot leave their own homes. They are already very hungry. Shiro, when he saw the temple, told Lear that perhaps this was what the guild was looking for. The ruins of an ancient magical civilization. Lear thought so too. Pati told them that the leader called it a cave, but a long time ago an unknown species created the structure. Nay was very surprised by such an amazing gift. All the stars aligned. She took out the cards and began to explain the plan to everyone. In order to minimize losses, they were to split into groups. 6 mithril-ranked people would suddenly attack on her command. 17 gold-ranked people would stand at the entrance and deal with the fly swatters leaving the cave. The remaining 53 silver-ranked and below would hunt those who broke through. Thanks to this plan, she expected not to miss a single fly swatter. An Eldos with platinum rank will stay in reserve in case of emergency. But Shiro said that he was already warming up alone. The other adventurers started shouting that they should not lag behind Nior, so they are going to fight. Ney did not understand why there were so many people who did not understand, but decided not to dwell on it and told Azure Flash that they would stay here. Covering Shiro and the rear, Rolf said that they can rely on them. The girl organized a new plan and shouted for everyone to follow Eldos and destroy all the fly swatters. As soon as everyone entered the cave, fighting began immediately. Azure Flash was still standing outside and waiting for what would happen. Shiro looked at his watch and said that 2 hours had already passed, but the people still hadn't come out, so something could have happened. But at that moment, Ney came out of the cave. The merchant immediately ran to her and asked how everything went. Eldos also came out, who began to laugh maliciously and ask who they thought he was. He started shouting that it was a nice morning exercise. Ney answered Shiro with a smile that Eldos almost single-handedly destroyed all the monsters, and she personally confirms that not a single fly swatter was left. Shiro said to this that it was simply amazing, because there were thousands of them. Lear looked at them in shock and answered that it was indeed. So the merchant asked if these fly swatters had a queen or something like that. Eldos thought about it but replied that even if there was, he killed it. More importantly, he was golden. So he asked Shiro if they had meat and drink. Shiro didn't answer that question, and immediately turned to Pati. He said that was great, and asked if she should tell the others that they destroyed all the fly swatters. Pati didn't know how to answer that. But suddenly she heard something, requests for help, and she asked Shiro if he heard what she heard, but no sounds happened. Pati jumped up and said that she would be right back. Shiro was not going to let her go alone, so he told Lear that they would be back soon. The little fairy flew away from the monster and asked for help, because he couldn't cope. Pati made it in time. She was about to kill the bug, but realized that she could also hurt the little fairy. When she tried to call it out with her own hands, she failed, but Shiro came running to the rescue with Nesko and Kilfa. The cat girl jumped on the monster and said that she knew his weak spot. So the witch used a frost spear and froze the fly swatter. At that moment, Pati flew up and grabbed the fairy so that she wouldn't break. Shiro thanked the girls for their help. Meanwhile, the adventurers were fighting off a new attack. Lear was shouting that this was not good because there were thousands of them again, and they were swarming in the nest. Ney did not understand what was happening because they had killed everyone. One of the assistants told her that most likely they did not notice another exit from the nest. It was deep inside, and the bodies blocked the passage. Ney said that she was unworthy of being called the leader because she did not take this into account. Pati understood that this way the monsters could get to the cave where everyone lived. Shiro ran up to her and suggested an idea. Lear saw this and asked what they were going to do. Without explanation, the guys took a can of gas. They decided to combine a wind cut and an improvised flamethrower to create an improvised fire tornado. After a while, Shiro said that everything worked perfectly, and their new creation was much more powerful and better than he thought. He was glad that they aimed at the air. Lear was amazed at his genius. But it didn't end there. A huge fly swatter appeared. Everyone realized that it must be the queen, but she was too huge. Shiro asked Pati if she could use the skill again. She replied that she could make one more shot. Rolf shouted to them that it was too late to think about anything, because a new attack was already starting. The queen was already flying towards the guys. Eldos began to say something about true justice. And suddenly, all the monsters in a chain began to fight with electric discharges. Eldos used Thunder Flash. The fly swatter queen fell defeated. Eldos apologized for making them wait, but Shiro wasn't angry at him. He just thanked him. The man replied that there was nothing to thank him for, because he was just returning his debt. Also, this was the first time he went all out with the magical axe. He got it from the immortal witch. Shiro knew something about it and asked if the axe could do something with true justice. He replied that Seagull could use true justice magic twice a day. Shiro said that he knew this. Besides Mel Gibson, his grandmother was a fan of Steven Seagal. Eldos approached him and asked how he knew about this. Shiro had to tell that he was the grandson of Arisa Gawamio, and now that he said it, he notices the similarities. Suddenly someone turned to Pati. It was the leader of the fairies. He asked her what was going on here. No one expected to see him. Everyone started to fly out. Lear didn't expect to see so many fairies, and they were very small and cute. The leader turned to Pati. He asked her why she came back after being banished, and why humans hunt fly swatters. She replied that it was a coincidence. She was banished from the village, so she shouldn't answer him. Shiro told the leader that Pati saved his life. And after the request of his savior, they came to exterminate the fly swatters and save the village. The chief said that he understood them. They were saved by Pati, and it is very ironic that it was the cursed one. Nesko did not know about this, so Pati explained to her that he was talking about the seal. Among them, this symbol is known for bringing bad luck. Nesko, when she saw it, called it a coat of arms. She said that among the guild of sages, this sign is known as a coat of arms. It appears only on those who are born with great power, the sign of the chosen one. But also strong mana is difficult to control. It is wild, so they say that most of the marked live an unsuccessful life. But it has been a long time since anyone has learned to control it, learning magic from the basics. And those who have learned to control mana have become great magicians known as sorcerers. Some races in remote settlements do not understand this and discriminate, but the coat of arms is not something to be ashamed of. It is a gift from the gods, proof of uniqueness. The chief, listening to this, said that this could not be. He asked her if she really wanted to say that their legends were misunderstood. Neska replied that she had studied all magic from the very basics, so she could vouch for her words and teach Poti if she wanted. If the bearer of the crest can control mana, then she is sure it will help the fairies a lot. The chief began to tell Poti that he is very sorry for all the hardships that she went through, so he wants to apologize as the head and as her grandfather, and bowed before her, knelt down and said that he is sincerely sorry. But the girl didn't want to see this. She flew up to him and started saying that he shouldn't do this, because if she hadn't been expelled, she wouldn't have met Shiro and would never have been able to save the village, so everything that is done for the best, and this is the right choice. Grandpa and everyone else, none of them made a mistake. After that, everyone returned home. But Pati collected her things. Shiro asked her if she was really going home. The fairy replied that she was returning. The chief asked her to return to the village. Aina began to cry and say that she did not want to part with her. Parashati explained that if she stayed with mortals like them, she would end up alone again. She also came to the city with the goal of finding that guy, but she didn't succeed, so she is grateful to Shiro for his hospitality and help. Unexpectedly, Karen came to them, who asked her to wait. She brought with her a letter that she found when she was looking through her ancestors' things. It seems to be addressed to a friend of her great-great-grandfather. There is a high probability that it is specifically for Pati. The fairy asked, "Please open it," and Karen began to read. The letter was addressed to a wonderful friend. They had not seen each other for a long time. A lot had passed since the day he promised to meet. Countless seasons had flown by. The thin and weak arms she laughed at had become even thinner and weaker. Even walking had become difficult for him. But he would very much like to run with her through the forest again, as he had then. Pati looked at this letter and cried. By a lucky coincidence, the man had learned something from his elf friend. Fairies live much longer than humans. And last time she had told him her name, so who brings bad luck? Pati Falulu. It was a beautiful name, and while he was writing this letter, he had said it many times. He never told her his name, and in the letter he introduced himself as Aaron. He thanked the fairy for meeting him. This is where the letter ended. Karen said that it turns out that Pati really helped her great-great-grandfather out. Pati, with tears in her eyes, said that she understood what his name was and laughed. She initially couldn't even believe that Aaron knew her name. She was his only friend, and he was her only friend. Aaron met his love. He was probably surrounded by children and grandchildren, and he was so happy. She was very happy for him. Pati said all this with tears in her eyes. Shiro said that maybe their human lives are short, but time means nothing between friends. Aaron will live in her memory as long as she lives. Fairy agreed with him. The guy also added that he did not consider it something insignificant. He would like her to keep him and Aina in her heart. He reached into his pocket and asked to look at something. It was a photo of the three of them. Anyone who saw it would think they were friends. Aina excitedly said that Pati was her best friend. Lear supported Shiro and said that he was 100% right. Kilfa was happy about the city, that they were very glad that they were able to get along well with the fairies. Neska turned to Pati and said that she understood her feelings to some extent. The blood of elves flows in her veins, and she also lives longer than people, but despite this, she is not afraid to love Lear. Every second spent with him she tries to keep in her heart. It was a choice she made herself, so she still wants to know Patty's choice. The fairy thought about it, and then replied that she wasn't worried at all or anything. She would return to the tree, and Nesca also promised to teach her how to control mana, and she can't leave Aina, she's such a crybaby. And time passes differently, so she will have to bury Shiro. The guy laughed and asked not to kill him. Aina jumped on her and began to hug her tightly. This is how the curtain fell on the adventure of the fairy Pati. 2 months passed before they knew it, and on the day of the harvest festival. Since Shiro promised Karen to help make the festival popular, he gave Aina a camera and assigned her as the photographer. While he and Karen opened the auction, Shiro called everyone to come over. He was handing out a legendary drink that could defeat even the famous hero, the strongest spiritist known as the Hero Killer, and this gentleman just bought it for only 44 silver. And their last lot was a mythological drink that could only be drunk by those who had received a blessing from a fairy. It was the fairy honey at the auction. It was produced by an artisan and ambassador of tourism in Ninorich Pati Flulu. The fairy flew out and greeted everyone. The bidding for the top quality honey started at 1 gold. The price rose to fabulous figures. Some time passed. Shiro said with satisfaction that they had a good catch. Pati laughed and said that Karen had a funny face. The mayor replied that even she could not keep her cool when dealing with such a large amount as 50 gold. Shiro laughed and said that it was good that Ninorich got so much profit. Karen agreed with him and added that it was all thanks to him. The guy replied that it wasn't worth praising, because he hadn't done much, and the honey was actually made by Pati. The fairy looked at them and said that she wanted to ask them both something. Whether they are going to have a child later or not. Karen didn't expect such a question, neither did Shiro. They started to answer that they don't have that kind of relationship. Party explained that Stella said that people are reincarnated or something. If Karen has children, they might become Aaron's reincarnation. Shiro started to stop her and say that it was easy to say, but people had to complete certain rituals many times before they could have them. Karen agreed with him, saying that children were born as a result of going through many trials by a man and a woman who loved each other very much. Patty asked to stop talking about it and asked if they could just make her a child. Shiro didn't answer that. Aina and her mother came to them. They asked if the auction was over. The guy answered that they finished here. He asked her if the work of the photographer went well. The girl answered that she had many visitors. The guy suggested taking a group photo. At night there was no light in the city, only lanterns. A dark city illuminated by a pleasant glow. This is the place created by Aaron, the small city of Ninorich. Shiro picked up the camera and said that he was shooting. He told the guys how best to stand and was about to take a photo, but suddenly someone recognized him and turned to him. The guy turned in that direction and asked the stranger who she was. She asked if he really didn't recognize her. Shiro apologized for not being able to remember and asked if they had met before. The girl said that she was his grandmother. Not only was the grandmother alive, but she also appeared at the harvest festival, even after Shiro started his life as a merchant. Reuniting with his grandmother was his greatest wish. It had been 2 months since he was told that. In the meantime, he was attacked by fly swatters while he was running an errand with the Azure Flash and accidentally met the fairy Pati. This meeting became very important to him. So much happened before the festival, and when he enjoyed the eve of the festival with everyone, she appeared. The guy didn't expect to see her at all. So in shock, he asked her again what she had just said, and the girl repeated that she was his grandmother. Aina asked who this girl was. She herself answered that as she could see, she was his grandmother. Aina was very surprised. Because she looked very young, Shiro still could not believe what was happening. He started pointing his finger at her and saying that his venerable grandmother was not such a young and tall girl like her, so this couldn't be. Karen turned to Arisu. She asked the mayor if she was doing well. The girl replied that it was great. This year the festival was going well, and it was all thanks to Shiro's help. Arisu was not surprised. She said that he grew up to be a good guy, and it was not for nothing that she took him to festivals from a young age. Shiro decided to make sure that she really was his grandmother, and asked what her favorite movie was. She answered Lethal Weapon. Then he asked the second place, his favorite actor, and everything matched what he knew. Arisu said that he had become very cautious, and she was upset. She asked him if he remembered when he was 7. On the way home from a movie, he wet himself and she had to change his clothes. Shiro blushed and asked him not to talk about his childhood in such detail. He asked her where she had been all this time, why she had disappeared without saying anything. Arisu asked for forgiveness and not to look so sad. Patty flew to them and asked who this woman was. She felt her incredible mana. Karen asked permission to introduce them and said that this was a living legend, an immortal witch. Arisa Gawamio, when people heard this, they immediately perked up. No one expected her to appear at the festival this year. Everyone wanted to greet her personally. Karen immediately began to apologize for saying it too loudly, but she asked not to worry, because she was used to it. But she still couldn't enjoy the festival. She took out Mel's magical star sword from her storage. She asked the people for forgiveness, but they had just met her grandson. So she wishes everyone sweet dreams. Everyone immediately started falling to the ground, falling asleep. Shiro asked her what she did to them. Arisu replied that it was just a small illusion. And now. She hugged him tightly and suggested to do it. Shiro didn't understand what she meant. Arisu opened a portal and said that they would send them home. They returned to their world. Shiro thought that they were about to crash into the roof of the house, but Arisu had everything under control. She flew through the wall and said that she really missed home. The guy poured her a drink and said that it was very touching. He was such a naughty child, and now he was politely pouring her tea. Shiro explained that he was already 25 years old. Arisu, while drinking, said that, in her opinion, he wanted to tell her something. The guy replied that of course he wanted to. He wanted to ask so many things, but he didn't even understand who she was. Eris pouted and replied that she had already told him that she was a witch. The guy explained that it didn't explain anything to him at all and asked her not to make faces at him. He was in complete disarray. The whole family was on edge trying to figure out where she had disappeared to. Eris replied that it was a secret. They, witches, had their own business. The guy thought that these were just excuses, and it was dishonest to answer questions like that, but he would move on to someone else. He asked her if she was really making herself look younger with the help of magic, some kind of illusion. She replied that of course they don't use it. She really does look like that, and her old appearance was a magical transformation. If she didn't look her age, people would suspect something. She used magic to make the appearance she had when she was alive in the real world. The guy said that this couldn't be. Arisu asked if he liked this appearance that was familiar to him. The guy answered that he didn't like it. It was just amazing and scary at the same time to see it in real life. Arisu started to tell how his grandfather once asked her to always stay young for him, and he always called her sweet and beautiful, and at night he loved her so fiercely. Shiro asked to stop talking about it. He didn't want to listen to such things, especially when it was about his grandparents. Arisu returned to her real form and asked if there were any more questions. And Shiro said that he was very surprised when he found out that the storage room had been connected to another world for several decades. Then he and Masaru had no money at all after building the house, so the couple had no money for traveling and other entertainment. And they quickly got tired of Asakusa and Ueno, so Arisu came up with the idea. They had one empty room, there was not even furniture there, so she decided to connect it with Lufaltio. They had fun as best they could, tamed all sorts of fantastic beasts, climbed the world tree, and kicked the ass of a stupid king who was mismanaging his lands. The two skills that Shiro used, Grandma was too attached to the logic of this world, so she was able to pass them on to him. If you think about it, she made skill books for Masaru too. She turned to Shiro and asked what kind of power he wanted for himself. The boy thought about it, and his grandmother explained that it was that inhuman power that allowed him to throw mountains, or the forbidden art of summoning the dead, or a spell that could cut the heavens themselves. He was her grandson, so she allowed him to choose whatever he wanted. The guy admitted that it was a very difficult choice. He asked her if he needed to answer right now. The girl answered that he could take his time with the answer. She would wait for his decision. And while she was in the real world, Shiro thanked her. But when he realized what she said, he asked what it meant. She would be here. Arisu asked if she couldn't, since it was their home with Masaru. The guy answered that of course she could. He was just very surprised. He had lost hope that they would be together again. He suggested celebrating it, throwing a party. He would cook her favorite sukiyaki. Arisu was surprised and said that it sounded very good, and she was counting on his hospitality. The next morning, Shiro quickly returned to Ninorich. He successfully entered the house, said that he was very lucky that the storage room was connected to the second floor. If it was connected to the front, he would have had to come at night, but now it was time to apologize to everyone. For yesterday, suddenly Aina, who was standing behind him, spoke to him. Pati was also with her. Shiro was shocked because he realized that he had just been caught. They definitely saw him go through the gate.